Hello everybody and welcome into my latest live broadcast. It is Wednesday, the 3rd of May, 2023. I'm your host, Kerry Holzman, and today, I'm kind of excited because I don't always get to be the first. I don't know why that's important. It really isn't, but it's different and I like different. So I was tooling around YouTube looking for any reviews of this little mini PC, the latest and greatest offered from the folks over at Minisforum. I just received this in the mail yesterday. So this is the UM560XT, and this is a little powerhouse. At least I think it is. We're going to open it up and find out. I do, for full disclosure, of course I always got to have full disclosure, full transparency. The folks at Minisforum sent this to me for free with the concept being that I'm going to use it for a review, which is what we're doing today. There's no money exchanging hands here. I don't believe these are available for sale yet anywhere but through Minisforum directly. And I did open it and do all the updates. These computers, for whatever reason, almost universally are always shipping with Windows 11 21 H2. And they should be on 22 H2. Yeah, I think I'm getting all that information correct. There is no 23 H2 yet, maybe in the fall. So I don't like reviews that don't use updated computers. I think those reviews are just worthless, or at least 30% of the review is inaccurate because they don't have all the updates. So before I review the computer, I wanted to have all the latest updates to ensure that the computer is operating as it should, presuming you buy one and you put all the updates on it. I want your experience to match what's seen on the video, at least within a reasonable period of time of the video being made. So I've gone ahead and did the Windows updates, which includes Windows 11 Pro 22H2, and that did not get offered to me from Windows Update. I had to actually use a Windows 11 media install and do the upgrade to force it. I'm sure it would have been offered to me within 24 hours or 48 hours. It usually is. However, I didn't have time for that, so I just forced it and then went back to Windows Updates to get any more Windows updates. So then I put everything back in the box the way it was, and we're gonna simulate the unboxing, but I've already had it out. Now, I haven't had everything out, just the computer and the power supply so I could power it up. So there's still gonna be some genuine surprises for me in that box, I'm sure. And I wanna show you the website, the Minisforum website, so we can take a look at what is this computer supposed to be. So let's turn on the window capture. So I'm just gone to minisforum.com. They're running their 5-year anniversary sale until today. Their sale ends today. I'm gonna hit the shop button. Oh, actually, wait, that looks like it right on the front there. I'm gonna hit the shop button. And so these are all the products Minisforum makes. You've seen many of these products before. Many of the products use the same case, right? So if you look at the UM773 and the UM560XT, that's what we have. It's basically the same case. That's pretty common. The same is true with other mini PC manufacturers. Here's the UM560. This is the UM560XT up here. And it's also kind of goes to the branding, right? They want to have a similar look amongst certain models. And Minisforum does have their own YouTube channel. In fact, we can jump over there real quick. We'll run over to YouTube. And let's take a look at, oh, Dawood has a new video today. Let's take a look at Minisforum. Whoops, I forgot the S. Right here. This is their website. Now their videos are in another language. They're speaking, I don't know, Cantonese, Mandarin, but they do have English subtitles. So these are their in-house videos. You can see they don't have very many views at all, and they have very few subscribers, which is shocking to me because if you want the latest and greatest on all the new mini PCs they've got coming out, you definitely want to subscribe to them, and they've got some pretty cool stuff. Like they talked about the anniversary sale a month ago. You would have been made aware of that. So just want you to know that that exists. And again, the computer we're looking at is the UM560XT. This is a brand new machine just released. I don't even think Amazon has it for sale yet. But here's the thing. If you get this with the bare bones version of this system, the 5900X, which is the one I believe I have here, the 5900X Ryzen 9, bare bones, meaning that you're going to supply your own solid state drive, your own operating system, and your own RAM, you're looking at $399 bare bones. Wait, sorry, this is the one, the 5600H. $219. I think, now I have to get my glasses and read the box. Which one did I get? I got the 5600H, yeah. So obviously, this is a Ryzen 5. These are Ryzen 9s, and the Ryzen 9s are going to be more powerful, and obviously that's going to cost you more money. So what we're looking at today is the Ryzen 5 5600H, but I don't have the bare bones system. I have the system that has 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage. So that brings that price to $299. With Windows 11 Pro, and of course with Windows 11 Pro, when you go through the setup process, you do not have to create a Microsoft account, nor do you have to do the Shift F10 thing and do that dance. This just don't have an internet connection, and it says, hey, you don't have an internet connection, so you can't create an account. Do you want to, hook up your internet, connect to the internet? And you say no, and it says, well, then you're going to have limited, that whole routine Microsoft does. You say, yes, I know. And then anyway, it's pretty straightforward, nothing special, no special dance you have to do. That's the version of Windows 11 Pro that's installed on the box. Hello to everybody in the chat. I'll go through some hellos here momentarily. I assume everybody can see and hear me okay. I'm not seeing anybody trying to shout at me. Your audio's not working. Keith Landers says, Kerry, I actually purchased this unit after watching your previous review. I'm trying to find the screws for the lid. I removed it to add a 2.5-inch drive. Yeah, I don't think they give you spare screws. I think they give you spare rubber feet. We'll find out when we get in the box. But obviously, when you're working on small electronics, it's important you have a clean workspace. And you can use a little ramekin or a little bowl just to keep the screws together. There's a little tip from your Uncle Kerry, instead of just mindlessly putting them down and then like, where did I put them? Because I do that too. But when I'm working on new machines and machines that aren't mine, where I have to take liability for it, I'm very, very conscientious of where I'm putting the screws, and I usually put them in order that I took them out. I work my way backwards through that order, even though in many cases it doesn't really matter. That's just my OCD. Avery wants me to check my email. Avery sent an Amazon gift card prior to the show. Thank you for supporting the show, Avery, and a super chat contribution as well. Let's see if there's anything else I've missed. Yeah, just the gift card from Avery, $3.50 Amazon gift card, and looks like a super chat contribution of, where did it go? Of $1. All right, Avery, again, thank you for supporting the channel. Shout out to you, my friend. Okay, getting back over to the Minisforum website. We can get a really good idea of what we're about to explore by simply visiting the manufacturer's site. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if I go back over there and we'll take a look at what information they've provided here. They do have some reviews of the 690, but not the 690 XT. And I know this gets confusing because you're like, Kerry, how could there be reviews for this if you say it just came out? If you said you were the first, I think there's a channel in India that did a review on this, but I think it's in another language. So I think I'm the first English-speaking channel to do the UM560XT. So these are the UM690, very closely related cousin, previous release, if you will. Now, they have the Neptune series, the Venus series, and these different series, which are explained on Minisforum's YouTube channel, are designed to meet certain requirements that fit the theme that they're naming Venus or Neptune, etc. So we don't have this unit here, which is the Ryzen 9 6900HX. We have the more affordable entry-level UM690XT. And this one's telling us all about Ryzen 9 and DDR5. I don't know that we have DDR5 here. So a lot of this information isn't really applying to us. There's your breakout right there of the exploded view of the system. A little bit about how they're cooling it using liquid metal. All our connectivity on the back are 2 HDMI ports, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A's. This one shows another 3.2 Gen 2 Type A. That's 4. Doing the math. A 2.5 gig Ethernet port, a Kensington lock port, your voltage input for the power supply, a dynamic microphone that's built in, USB 3.2 Type 2, USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C, that's a data-only port on the front of the unit, and then a USB 4 Type C port, also on the front of the front of the unit. Does not have any Type A ports. Here you've got an input for a headset and or a microphone. And to the far left, it looks like headset only. That's our power button. Oh no, that's not our power button. That's our clear. This is our power button. This is our clear CMOS button, but why does it have a set of headphones over it? That's bizarre. Well, we're going to open up the box and we're going to take a closer look, obviously, because I'm easily confused. Let me go back to camera 1. Now, I want to remind you, my videos are all live. They're unscripted. Everything is what it is. And I do my best to try and keep everything moving, try to move at a decent enough pace. But sometimes, because it's live, I might misspeak or I might say I'm going to do something and forget. That's where you get to call me out on it while I'm live in the chat room. Jump in there and you can help me out by letting me know if I have forgotten to do something, because again, these are live. So let's go ahead and get this box opened up. In fact, you know what else we can do? I've got this camera arm here, which I've only used once now. And I can swing that over here like this. Look at me. Let's go this way. Like that. And then I need an HDMI cable to plug into that. Like so. And then we turn this on. Is that turning on? I hit A button. I'm not sure I hit the power button. I'll know when the lens extends. Oh, there's 2 buttons right close to each other. Okay. Let's turn that way, and let's see what happens if I activate that camera. Hey, that's pretty close. Pretty close. Okay, let's see what's in the box. Luke says, Mara better not find out you're using that camera arm. Yeah, I know, right? Okay, we've got our little warning here. We do not recommend customers remove the CPU cooler themselves. You got that? Improper disassembly may damage the motherboard and CPU, and it could also reduce the liquid metal sealing tightness. They have a special application. I've talked with my contact over at Minisforum, and he went on about this process they use about using the liquid metal, and I explained my concerns about it, and he said, oh no, we've already thought of all that. And anyway, got a little documentation here. We'll set that aside. Then, of course, we've got the computer, and I did take this out, and I tried to put it back the way it came out. I won't be using that plastic bag ever again, because I just wanted it for the effect that that's what you will go through if you buy one of these. There's the front of the unit, but that sure does look like headphones to me. What is going on with that symbol? What am I missing here? I think it's supposed to be like a... Ow, I just pinched my finger. I think it's supposed to be like an arrow But that's if you were, trying to overclock this and you pushed it too far, you could reset your BIOS with a straightened paper clip into that hole. Power button, headphone, microphone, USB Type-C, USB Type-C. You also see there's a little picture of a monitor. That means you can use that as a monitor output. You could also use this one as a monitor output. So that means you could have up to 4 monitors on this, I believe. That's your microphone right there. We've got vents on this side. We've got, well, this one doesn't have 4 USB 3.2s. This has the 2 USB 3.2s and what appears to be 2 USB 2.0s. And the reason I mention that is the SS here, super speed, and the color blue indicate the USB 3 or 3.1, 3.2. We do, in fact, have verified we have the 2.5 gig LAN, 2 HDMI out, and the Kensington lock, or K-lock, right there. And on the other side, we've got our serial number, our model number, input voltage, 19 volts, our FCC ID. And on the bottom, if we were to open this up, we have to remove these rubber feet. These big rubber feet here, the little tiny rubber feet on each corner, and here. Now, if I had a criticism of Minisforum, this is it. I do not like having to remove something that's glued to open the unit up and then either have to re-glue it, or they often give you spares in the box. However, at some point the spares aren't going to be made anymore. So I would prefer that the rubber feet either had a hole in them, and yes, you can use a drill and drill your own hole in them, of course, but I don't want to do that. And I'm hesitant to open this up because I know when I put it back on, it's not going to stick as well unless I get some glue. And sometimes glue gets messy and it just looks terrible. So I wish the units were a little more user-friendly when it comes to opening them to do any SSD or RAM upgrades. So that's one little criticism. And then let's see what else we have in the box. We've got, Minisforum has this little stand. And they do this with a lot of their PCs, and it kind of puts them in a unique place in the market, because what you can do is you can set this down and then have your mini PC sit in here. And there's no tools or anything, it just sits flush like so. I guess we'd have to go to camera 1 for you to really see that. And I like that it's got a little, take it out of there. It's got a little rubber grommet around it so it won't scratch up your mini PC. Yeah, there's the spare feet I was talking about. There's the big feet anyway that go on 2 of the corners, so you do get 2 extras. This is a little SATA cable, and this is if you want to add a 2.5-inch drive to the inside of the unit. You're going to need to plug it into something. So they don't ship with this inside of the computer, and I don't think most people would even add a 2.5-inch drive, but you can if you want to. It is an option, and that's what this included cable is for. Now, also included is a VESA mount. This is to mount it, you could mount this on the wall against the side of your desk. The screws are here. The 2 screws will mount into these holes here on the bottom of the unit, this one and this one, and that's what the included screws are for, as well as to the back of your monitor if you wanted to mount it to the back of a monitor. Otherwise, you could simply hold on, I'm looking to see what screws are there. Yeah, so what you would do is these keyhole slots, it appears, are the ones you're going to need to use. I think. And they should be designed in such a way that you can slide the unit out of the holder without having to unscrew it. And you could also mount this, you could put the screws through a side of a desk, or you could mount it to a wall, whatever you want to do there. It's all your options. This is a very small, or short rather, HDMI cable, so that if you do mount this unit behind your monitor, you don't want a 6-foot cord that only needs to run 6 inches. So this is like a 1-foot HDMI cable. This is our US power cord right here. This is your standard two-prong. The end of this is a standard, almost old school laptop style power cord, along with a laptop style power adapter, which we can look at the output here. Now, one of the things that I don't like is when a manufacturer does not put the name of the product or the manufacturer on the power brick. These power bricks all look alike, and if you plug the wrong power brick into the wrong device, you could smoke the device and the power brick. So what I'll do is I'll get my label maker out and I will write Minisforum UM560XT on it. So that way if these two ever get separated, and I see this in a box with a bunch of other ones, I don't have to play Russian roulette with power adapters. Now, for the sake of the review, I don't need the HDMI cable, and I don't need the VESA mount, and I don't need this little stand. And it's interesting to me, they only give us the two big rubber feet, not the little tiny rubber feet. That's kind of weird, because to open this, you're going to have to remove all four rubber feet. I would have liked to have seen no spare rubber feet, and instead be able to access the screws without having to remove anything glued down. That would be my preference. This should be unnecessary. Or the other thing they can do is they could drill a hole through these that line up with the hole for the screw, because it won't affect the rubber pad protecting the surface of your desk. I would like to see them do that. And that's all that's in the box. So I'll just put this aside for now. And we can go back over to camera 1. There we go. And then I will turn this one off. Takes it a while to shut off. You'll see the lens retract. There it goes. And we'll just push that aside for now. And we'll come back to that a little bit later. Okay. Now, another criticism I have for many of the mini PCs is quite often the cords are just too darn short. That's not very far. And you think, well, as long as either that cord or this cord is 6 feet long, it'll be fine. Neither cord is 6 feet. They're both relatively short. This one looks to be about 4 feet, and this one looks to be about 4 feet. So overall, this one barely makes the grade. I would prefer this was a 6-foot cord. However, these are all very, very minor criticisms. What really matters is how well the machine works, how fast it is, what value it offers for the dollar, and if it's reliable, right? That's really the most important part. And of course, we can only know that through time. There's no way that we can simulate that. But we got to start somewhere. So let me plug this in. I'll give it some power down here. And I'll give it power right here. And let me step around and we'll turn on, oh, I need a keyboard and a mouse, don't I? I need a keyboard, a mouse, and an HDMI cable. So let's get that set up. Oh, there's no USB Type A on the front, so I'm going to use the USB 2 on the back. I'm not going to waste a USB 3 on a keyboard and a mouse. It's not like I'm going to type any faster. My mouse isn't going to move any quicker. All right, and then I have an HDMI cable down here somewhere. Here we go. And either one of these HDMI ports is all we need. Turn that on, and then I will switch over to my HDMI input on the OBS software. Got to use the right mouse, Carrie. There it is, it's starting to boot. So once again, I've already gone through the setup process. It should take us right to the desktop, and I've copied over some utilities so we can see what kind of hardware it's detecting and what kind of performance we can get, let's say, out of the solid state drive. So let's start with CPUZ. We're going to run that. There's our processor. Our current speed. There's our main board, all the details regarding the motherboard. As for memory, we've got 2 sticks that are 8 gigs each. This is DDR4, not DDR5 as the other models. The more expensive models have the DDR5. And more specific information on the SPD, or the serial presence device of the RAM. Identifies it as A data. And 3200 speed RAM. Graphics are going to be the built-in graphics, the Radeon graphics that are built into the CPU. And then, if we take a look at our storage, we can do Crystal Disk. Is this Info or Mark? Which one is this? This is Info. So we could see who the manufacturer is, just out of curiosity. Doesn't tell me who it is, does it? It just says it's ES05. I don't know who that is. It is PCIe Gen 3, so it's a Gen 3, not a Gen 4 device. And we'll go to Crystal Disk Mark. Now, I've already run Crystal Disk Mark on it last night. These are the results I got. That'll save us some time. There are faster drives out there that are Gen 3. However, if you want to hit that $219 price point, you know, you've got you're getting what you pay for. In this case, I think you're getting a really good value for what you're getting. You can order the bare bones, and you can put your own RAM in there. You can put your own solid state drive in there, and you can pick if you want to, you know, easily double the cost of the unit just for storage and RAM. I mean, I can put a 2 terabyte NVMe in there and 64 gigs of RAM and easily double the cost of the whole unit. So then, you know, if you're attracted to it because of the price, then don't be disappointed if you don't have a massive amount of storage or the fastest storage. You sort of have to pick one or the other. That's universal across the marketplace. There's nothing unique or different here. So let me close this. Now you can do gaming on this. If I plug my utilities flash drive in here, let's see what I can copy over for testing the graphics. Let's see, under PC testing, we can do the 3D Mark. Yeah, I suppose we'll Cinebench R23. That ought to make it really angry. Let's find out. This machine is not designed to do this kind of work, but if you're curious what kind of numbers it'll pull to give you some basis for comparison, let's run it and see. It's easy to do. There we go. Okay. Start. All right, so while this is running, I'm going to put myself back on screen here for a moment, and then I'm going to move myself up into the corner, you know, like I usually do, just so you can keep an eye on me. Well, that's actually running better than I thought it would. I thought we were going to be here a while, but that's quite respectable. Let me take a look in the chat room and see what I'm missing. Elko and Piter apparently are speaking Dutch in the chat room. Okay, I guess they could have their own little private conversation. Welcome in, guys. Bob R said that was a fast boot. Yeah, it was pretty good. And it's completely silent. Shane Perkins says that is a pinhole reset. Yes, it is. Does it have USB4? No, it does. You know what? I don't think it does. That's a good question because they do advertise the more expensive model with USB4. Let me open up the documentation here and see what specifications the documentation says. USB-C provides a transfer rate up to 10 gigabits per second. Okay. Then it says the headphone, headset, microphone jack. It's 3-in-1. The connector is used to connect any of those three things. The reset hole. They call it the reset hole. Always protect your reset hole. That USB-C port on the front, as I mentioned, supports display output at 4K 60 Hertz. We mentioned the Kensington lock and the 19-volt power input, the 2.5 gig LAN. The USB is USB 3.2 Gen 2. It is not USB 4. That's the model above this one. And then there's USB 2.0, which I already talked about. So it does not appear, this model does not have USB 4. You'd have to go apparently to the Ryzen 9 version of this model from Minisforum for USB 4. Do you have any USB 4 devices that you would use it, or you're just trying to future-proof? I've never seen a USB 4 device yet, but you know, it's a chicken and egg thing, right? Somebody's either got to make the device or someone's got to make the port. They don't want to make the port if there's no devices supporting it. And they don't want to make the devices if nobody's got a port to plug it into. Let me go full screen so I can see this. Oh, wrong full screen. I didn't need to look at myself. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Let's go full screen over here. How many times does this thing run? Does it just run indefinitely? I'll just let it keep running. What the heck? And I'm assuming it's doing it to get an average score. Seven Snow says, I think USB 4 is used for external GPUs. You know, I suppose it could be. It's typically, you want like a Thunderbolt port traditionally in an external GPU. But USB 4 probably has the bandwidth to support that, so that it's an alternative to Thunderbolt. Joshua C. says, watching during work hours today, hope all is well. Hey, good to see you, Joshua. Thanks for popping in. Obey wants to know what I think about an i3 12100F with an RX 6650 XT. Really, it just depends on what your expectations are, how much money you've got to spend, and how you'll be using it. At the end of the day, any configuration can work at any price point for any individual, depending on that individual's needs and expectations. There's nothing wrong with any of those parts. As to whether or not it's a good value, as to whether or not it meets your needs, as to whether or not for the same money you could get something better, I don't know without knowing all that other information, but there are no bad parts as far as that goes. Like any major manufacturer, I should say, there's some bad parts on Wish.com and AliExpress, but like, you know, reputable manufacturers, we talk about CPUs, Intel and AMD, there's no bad parts. Sometimes a manufacturer can have an error in manufacturing, but that's usually highlighted pretty quickly and resolved. But that's usually going to happen right when a product is introduced. So if you're somebody who wants to be first, then you are somebody who's going to pay more. You might even have to wait in line to buy it. And whatever growing pains exist, you'll experience it, so the rest of us don't have to. Piter says he has a 9700K CPU with an RTX 2060 with 32 gigs of DDR4 on a Z390. It's a great system. And granted, that's about 4 years old, but it's still a rocket ship by today's standards. Nothing wrong with that. Jim KJ3N says there's no bad parts, only bad prices. Well, there's good prices too. So I'm curious, is this just testing in a loop, or does it run a certain number of tests? I don't normally run Cinebench, and when I was running it, I was using R15, not this R23. It looks like it's just going to keep running. I don't see a countdown. I'm going to hit stop. Yeah, because it didn't give us a final number here. Well, let's go ahead and do the other test. Everything is live and unscripted. Everything's happening in real time. Now, personally, I don't put a lot of weight into benchmarks with regards to how the machine's going to work for an individual. Individuals use their computers uniquely. Rarely do I see two individuals running the computer in the same way unless it's their employees at a company. Home users, they're all over the map. Everyone is unique, just like everyone else. So you have to decide if it's enough for you. You have to decide if it's a good value. You have to decide if it's going to meet your expectations and your needs, which will be unlike anybody else's in the world. So I can at least give you an idea for you to base that on. And I can tell you that when I review these mini PCs, especially ones from Minisforum, B-Link, and Ace Magician and Camrui, I can tell you those companies are making a good solid product, and these companies have been around a number of years. Minisforum celebrating their 5-year anniversary. I think Ace Magician / Camrui just celebrated their 10th anniversary. And it's not like a fly-by-night company that's going to take your money and disappear. So I want to be very cautious over the things that I bring to your awareness in the hopes that if I think something's a little sketchy, or if I think something is potentially not something I would offer to a customer of my own, then I really don't want to offer it to you. I still may make a video if it's particularly alarming, just to make you aware of it and what to watch for. But I always look forward when I receive computers from Minisforum, because I know they're good machines. Do any of you have a Minisforum built computer, and if so, would you buy it again? Oh, there's a countdown in the upper left. Oh, thank you for pointing that out. Again, my screen, if you could see what I see right now, I have windows in windows, and so I don't get to see it full screen like you do unless I can see either my camera full screen or I can see the HDMI output full screen, one or the other. Otherwise, I'm looking at both screens within a window within OBS. So everything is super tiny. So thank you for pointing that out. Seven Snow says they have a UM690, and yes, they would buy another one. They would do it all over again. I got my little B12 energy drink today because I'm having trouble getting my butt in gear. Maybe that'll give me the boost I need. Wash that down, a little Gatorade. Do any of you have any specific questions about this unit? Well, I've got it here. I know some people want to know, like, questions that I'm baffled why they're asking. Like, they want to know who makes the Wi-Fi card, who makes the Ethernet card. And I don't mind pulling that information, but when they ask in the comments after the video is aired, that computer's already been put back in the box and put up on a shelf until the next follow-up review. So for me to answer that question means I would have to completely unbox it, hook it all back up, fire it back up, and look it up. So, well, I've got it out right now. Let me see, we'll go full screen over here on that computer. We'll right-click on the Start menu, and we'll go to the Device Manager. And it looks like for network adapters, this has Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. It's an Intel i225V 2.5 gig Ethernet LAN controller, NIC card, network interface card, or NIC, NIC. And then for Wi-Fi, we've got this RZ68 Wi-Fi, does that say Wi-Fi 6E? Is that right? Well, that's impressive. A lot of the mini computers will still have Wi-Fi 5 or Wi-Fi 6 most commonly. So the fact that this has Wi-Fi 6E, the latest and greatest in Wi-Fi, that's a nice touch, although I personally wouldn't use Wi-Fi 6E. But for those of you who are interested, there it is. Paul wants to know what's the max RAM that you can have in this PC. This PC has 2 RAM sockets, and the biggest memory modules you can buy that are SODIMM DDR4 are 32 gigs. So 2 times 32 is 64. And in most cases, that's going to be the scenario in most end user computers, depending on how many slots you've got and whether it's DDR4 or DDR5. So the more slots you have, like with the big beast build, we had 8 slots. And the largest memory module we could buy at that time was 32 gig. So I had 8 32 gig modules. So 32, 64, double it again to 128, and double another 128 gave us a total of 256 gigs, because the 32s were the largest DDR4 module we could buy. Because we have 2 sockets on this unit, that means we have dual channel, and it means because it's DDR4, the maximum size RAM per module is 32 gig, with a maximum of 2 modules for a total of 64 gigs of RAM. So it's not a limitation of the machine. It's a limitation more or less of what RAM is available for you to buy. Politically Incorrect says, we bought a mini PC, but not from this manufacturer, but it does as intended. I always like to hear feedback on these mini PCs. They're just taking over the world, man. There are so many new models being introduced constantly, and they just keep getting more powerful and less expensive. Really good value in these. Lou Greeny has got an Ace Magician mini PC that he's really enjoying. Politically Incorrect says the news is out today that the current Windows 10 is the last. That's fine. That's normal and to be expected. There'll still be regular updates every month until October 14th of 2025. You just won't have any more of the big build updates, which is fine. Adib says, have you stopped building the 8-year builds? No, didn't I just recently do an 8-year build a couple months ago? No, what was the last 8-year build I did? I'm sure it's on my channel here. Let me see. When was the last one? So the 8-year builds, I don't know how often you think that needs to be updated, but about once a year would be an update for the 8-year build. So if I've done a build in the last year, then it's current. I've done so many videos, I can't keep straight the last 8-year build video I did or when I did it. It looks like, I'm just looking through my recent videos here. I suppose I could just write the word build in my search. That would probably make this happen a lot quicker. So 6 months ago, I did a build featuring a Z690 with a Core i9-12900K. There's just not a lot that's changed in the last 6 months. So I'm still sticking with those configurations for 8-year builds. Now, obviously, you could go with you know, a 13th gen instead of a 12th gen. But that's the other thing that's happening are these mini PCs are just taking over, right? And it's almost starting to make more sense for a lot of people to simply buy a mini PC and be done with it. Mark Gaines contributes 12 pounds. He says, good evening, Kerry. I'm sitting at McDonald's. That's a nice little PC. Hey, Mark, thank you for your Super Chat contribution, as always, and enjoy your McNuggets, whatever you're eating at McDonald's. Politically Incorrect wants to know if the CPU is permanent or can it be changed. Most of the CPUs on these mini PCs are laptop CPUs, and they are surface mount technology, SMT technology, that the CPU is soldered to the motherboard. So no, you cannot change the CPU on these. Now, I personally do not have any customers in my 30 years of business that ever replaced a CPU. It's never happened. So that's an enthusiast activity that very few computer buyers actually do that. It also adds cost to the computer because it's cheaper to surface mount the CPU than it is to have to buy the socket. Furthermore, a desktop CPU is larger and consumes more power, and that results in a machine that's going to be physically larger and require more aggressive cooling. So it is far superior, it's far ideal for cost, efficiency, power consumption, and noise to have the CPUs on these mini PCs and on laptops be designed specifically for that purpose. If you want something to upgrade, you should stick with a traditional desktop, for sure. Yeah, Jim in the chat room has it right. If you want to tear this thing apart to change the CPU, this is not the computer for you. You cannot do that. Paul Garrett said, this is an impressive little unit. Is it? I haven't been paying attention to the score. Did our test end? Oh, it looks like it, oh no, it's still running. Let me go full screen so I can see it. Maybe that'll be a great idea, huh? Whoopsie. Click something wrong here. Full screen on my HDMI input. There it is. And we have a timer somewhere up here? Is that what you guys said? Is there a timer? It says 0000 and stop. Well, it's still running, I guess. Well, we'll let it continue to run. You'll see that the Cinebench R23 recognizes this as an AMD Ryzen 5 5600H. That's 6 cores and 12 threads at 3.3 gigahertz. For some reason, it thinks we're on Windows 10, when of course we're on Windows 11. I should probably re-download the Cinebench software so I have a current version. I don't use it very often. And the bottom of the screen says, performing single core render test, pass number 2. Doesn't tell me out of how many passes, 2 of 20 or 2 of 2, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the latest version of this, so that much should be obvious to you. I'll tell you what we can do with this though. I can live stream from this unit. I can blow your mind. We can grab a USB capture card. We can temporarily disconnect from the live stream without ending the live stream. When I say we, I'm referring to myself. I can disconnect this unit. I can load the free OBS software on here, copy my OBS configuration from that machine to a USB drive and then onto this one, so I don't have to do any setup. And then all I have to do is hit start broadcast, and using a HDMI to USB capture device, plug one of these cameras in, and my video is exactly the same. You would never know that I was broadcasting off the little machine. The only main difference is I've got 4 inputs on the streaming computer, so I can switch camera 1, camera 2, close-up camera, and the HDMI output. That's 4 inputs. But if I use the capture card, the USB capture card, it only has 1 HDMI. So for me to do that, I'd have to run an HDMI cable from one of these sources, like preferably camera 1, and feed it into the mini PC, and then I could start streaming, continuing the broadcast right off that mini PC. It's no problem. And we'll take a vote in the chat room if that's something you want me to do, because we can do that live without ending the stream. Paul McIntosh says at $219, computers like this are disposable. I would tend to agree with that, except the only caveat or the only condition I would add is that $219, well, yes, it would ultimately be a disposable computer, and that ultimately all computers are disposable computers. It's the amount of lifespan you can expect out of it. So how much life can we expect out of a $219 computer? And with this one specifically, I can see a full 8 years, full 8-year lifespan out of this. But there are other units that are, super inexpensive, $150. They're, only 2 cores perhaps. They're not upgradable at all. And those units, you probably get about 3 or 4 years out of those. Those are also disposable. But the length of time, I'm trying to find the right words to explain this. The length of time, useful life that you can get out of the unit, out of this unit is very similar to the length of time you would get out of a desktop. Jim KJ3N says streaming takes nothing. Streaming and gaming on the same machine takes a lot more than this mini. Oh, I would agree with that for sure. Yes, yes. But you could, say, game from your console, feed the video output of the console into the USB capture card, and then back out to your monitor. And then you can use this computer to stream and your console to game, and you can broadcast on Twitch while you've got yourself in a little box like I am on this. You could plug in a webcam, USB web camera, use the capture card to capture the console, and now you're gaming without any degradation of quality of gameplay because it's not affecting the console at all. And you're broadcasting to, say, Twitch using your webcam and your video feed from your console with 0 latency so it doesn't impact your gameplay. It's pretty impressive if that's your thing. Paul McIntosh says, I was responding to someone criticizing that the CPU isn't replaceable. He said if the CPU went bad, you can't reuse the motherboard. Well, so the CPU going bad is so rare. I've only seen 3 or 4 or 5 CPUs. Let's round it up to 6. I've only seen 6 bad CPUs in 30, how many years have I been doing this? 32 years of doing this. It's very, very, very rare. The CPUs that go bad are traditionally socketed CPUs. The same with RAM. I have never seen surface-mounted RAM go bad, and I have never seen a surface-mounted CPU go bad. Also, the surface mount is a shorter connection electrically, both from the RAM to the CPU to the architecture of the system. So the system actually runs faster if it's not socketed. But the cost of the socket adds to the cost of the system. And the sockets, there's something called, oh, come on, Carrie, think of it. What's it called? Chip creep. And chip creep happens as the system heats up and cools down and heats up and cools down. It contracts, it expands, and the chip starts to work itself out of the socket. Now that's more of a problem we had back in the 90s, right? The sockets today, especially like standard SO-DIMM sockets, they lock in. However, if the machine gets bumped around and things like that, it's very common for parts to get dislodged. So the benefit of SMT technology is that it's never going to get dislodged. It's far less volatile or subject to finickiness about how it's seated. And it's much easier to transport the computer. I can ship one of these far less expensive. I don't have to worry about anything breaking. It is far superior to have the stuff surface mounted. Even your RAM. Surface mounted RAM is far faster and far superior than socketable RAM. It also reduces the cost. And I know this goes against everything you've learned, right? Because if you've been in this industry for 20 plus years like I have, we saw these sockets as being beneficial. And we saw it as the opportunity to upgrade, to be able to swap out a chip. But the problem is, oftentimes when you swap out a chip, you often have to change the motherboard, or there's no benefit to the upgrade, or the benefit is very limited if you're not also upgrading the chipset, which is not socketed. You don't hear anybody complaining about their chipset not being socketed because it's never been offered, and it doesn't occur to them that would be awesome to have that, because then I wouldn't have to replace my motherboard. So usually when people replace CPUs, you really don't have a choice in most cases but to replace the motherboard. And as we continue moving forward, you always have to replace your motherboard just to keep up with the latest storage technology. That IDE hard drive isn't going to plug in anymore. And that SATA-based drive, you probably don't want to use it because NVMe is so much faster, smaller, lower power consumption, cheaper. Yeah, it's cheaper than SATA. It has a better warranty. It's incredible. Now, if my storage was soldered on, that would upset me, okay? I don't want my storage soldered on. Let me be very clear on that. I don't want the tires welded onto my car. I want to be able to change them out if I have a flat. But in most cases, you're going to want to upgrade your motherboard if you upgrade your chip, because keeping the same motherboard limits what your new chip can do. So why would you even bother? It's just food for thought. Jim KJ3N says mobile CPUs usually go bad because something on the board went bad. Well, that's true of desktop CPUs as well. Like there's all this talk of this AMD chip that Gamers Nexus exploded or whatever. That's not really on AMD, it's really on the motherboard manufacturers that's causing that. The argument is whether or not AMD should be more, have more enforcement to the board manufacturers about the requirements. And that's been my issue with AMD since day one of the Ryzen introduction. And my frustration isn't with the chip, it's with the motherboard. It's like all you're doing is talking about the tires with no consideration for the car. It's bizarre to me. So people are like, oh, are you team red, are you team blue? Both chips are good. AMD CPUs, Intel CPUs, they're amazing. But the number of problems I have with AMD Ryzen-based CPUs with RAM compatibility, just board issues, board reliability, it's just not there compared to the boards that are made for Intel, even from the same board manufacturer, which doesn't make any sense to me. But I can't really hold AMD to the fire for that one. I mean, that's on the board manufacturers. And again, you know, if I were going to upgrade, let's say I was going to upgrade this system here, I would want DDR5, not DDR4, and I would want PCIe Gen 4, not PCIe Gen 3. So just upgrading that chip, even if I could, would be a bad investment, because the amount I would get back out of that upgrade would be a fraction of what the chip could possibly do, with the idea being the chip could have faster memory with DDR5, faster I/O through the NVMe through the M.2, faster I/O and more channels through the PCI Express lanes. So just changing the chip, it's like changing the tires on your car and thinking that you've somehow improved the performance on your car. Like in a very technical sense you have, but in a practical sense it probably doesn't really make much difference. So for that reason, and also because I've been in business for 30 plus years, no customer has ever paid me, ever, to upgrade their CPU. It's never happened. That's an enthusiast activity. That's something a very small fraction of home users do, and it doesn't represent the marketplace. So the market's going to follow where the money's coming from. But they do get to make a lot of money off of those people. So there's still enough business, there's enough profit in it that they still offer that for the enthusiasts, and the enthusiasts pay more than everybody else for that feature. And that's fine, just be aware of it. No free lunch, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's a cost one way or the other. And again, yeah, Yates Networks, it's nothing against AMD CPUs. It's about the manufacturers of the boards. AMD doesn't make the boards, and all the issues I've had with AMD are motherboard related. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so is this test still running, or did it finally end? I can't see. Oh, it looks like it finally ended. Let me go run this first test again. Let's get this out of the way so we can get some final numbers. I've let my impatience get the best of me here. So while we're waiting, because this is obviously going to take a few minutes, feel free to ask any questions you have, preferably technical questions, or if something confuses you in technology, I'll do my best to explain it to you. Assuming I know the answer, which I may not. I don't know everything. Yates Network said, I'll take a performance dip in favor of reliability. Fair enough, I've had similar issues. Well, I remember when I was taking a college course to be an ASE certified auto mechanic at the GM training facility at the college. I remember specifically what the instructor said with regards to performance. Does your transmission affect the performance of your car? Does the starter on the car affect the performance of the car? Does the battery that starts the engine, does that affect the performance of the car? Do the tires affect the performance of the car? Well, if you have a flat tire, it absolutely will have a negative impact on performance. If your transmission isn't shifting properly, it is going to affect the performance of the car. If your tires are all worn out and aren't getting any traction to the ground, it's going to affect the performance of the car. If you cannot start the car, it is going to affect the performance of the car. So it kind of leads back to the old fable of the tortoise versus the hare. You can have stable and solid, steady, well, how does the expression go? Steady wins the race. Or you can just jackrabbit it, push everything to the red line, and blow your engine up, and then not finish the race at all, or DNF, did not finish. Which one is faster, the tortoise or the hare? And in the case of this fable, of course we all know, the tortoise wins by being slow and steady, consistent. That fable exists because in life, this is quite often the way things work, right? Here in Phoenix, people like to drive very quickly. They usually go 10 to 15 miles an hour over the public posted speed limit. That's just normal. But what's amazing to me is when you're in a sea of cars, because Phoenix is a very, very crowded place, I see cars weaving in a sea of cars. One car is like moving one car length and moving back and forth. And then I get to show right up next to him at the stoplight. And I didn't do any of that. I was relaxed. My state of mind was calm. This person's all wired up. Sometimes I'm sitting at a red light and the car in front of me kind of starts to go and then stops when they realize the light hasn't changed yet. This happened to me yesterday. I was just sitting there minding my own business and I see the car next to me start to move. And I look to see if did the light change? Because it seems too early for the light to have changed. No, I don't know what's going on with this guy. And he does it again. Then he does it again. And I know there's going to be a green arrow. So clearly there's a green arrow. He thinks it's a green light. He starts to go. He stops 4 times. He starts and stops. Accelerator, brake, accelerator, brake, accelerator, brake. Then the light turns green and he's not paying attention. and I just accelerate normally, move up. I had to get in his lane to get on the freeway, so I just got in front of him, and he was way behind me. So what was all that about? I have no idea. So, yeah, what are you gonna do? Daryl Loftus joins us in the chat and says hello. Hey, welcome in, Daryl. RV says if you don't pay the installment of the car on time, that's going to affect its performance. Or run out of gas. That'll affect its performance too. What is this? Joshua C. in the chat room wanted to know something. I see the response to Joshua, but I don't see the original question. Hey, there's our good friend Bill Leatherland. Hi, Bill. Bill's watching us in the UK. He's been a follower of the channel for a long, long time. I'm trying to find that original question. Oh, do I do any soldering as a way to repair computers or laptops? Well, the problem we run into today here in America, and I don't know, what country are you in, Joshua? American labor prices often exceed the value of the equipment you're working on. So if I were to take my car to a mechanic, they're not going to, let's say I have a bad water pump, they're not going to take the water pump off the car, rebuild it, and put it back on the car. What we do in America is we just put another water pump on the car. Even if your transmission goes out on a brand new car, they're not going to fix the transmission. They're going to drop the transmission, put a new one in, and they send the transmission off typically to another country where the labor is cheaper to do the rebuild. And that's what it is. It's always been my whole life that way with cars. Well, computers are the same way. It doesn't make any sense to pay me let's just call it $100 an hour to solder some 13-cent capacitor on your board, because we don't know what caused that capacitor to go out. So those repairs are often temporary, they're very time-consuming, and they may not be done right in the sense that the amount of work that has to be done to identify and positively fix permanently whatever the problem is takes more time. So if it'll cost you the same or less to replace the part, then your repair is faster. You have a new warranty. In some cases, you can get a better part, so you're getting an upgrade at the same time. And there's no worry about it being repaired right the first time or not. It's one thing to identify the bad part. It's another thing to identify what caused that part to go bad. So unless we're working with a piece of equipment that's worth several $1,000s, it's simply cheaper to swap the part out. It's also faster. And it's also more assuring to the customer that this problem is gone forever. So that's why we do it that way here in the United States. Ben Fitzpatrick says, Kerry, I've watched your channel since 2012 Gaming Build. Right on, Ben. Yeah, well, I recognize your name too. Appreciate you, my friend. Bill Logsdon says hello from Florida. Sarge Tech says, I have a State Farm speed detector device on my windshield behind the rearview mirror. It forces me to obey the speed limit. I save a lot on my car insurance. It affects the amount I pay for insurance. Yeah, Tesla does that too. You can buy your insurance for your Tesla from Tesla, but it'll tell you, like, if you tailgate people, it knows, and it'll say your rate would be cheaper if you didn't tailgate as much. Here in Phoenix, if you drive the speed limit, you might get shot. I'm just telling you, if you're obstructing traffic, you could even get pulled over for obstruction, even though you're driving the speed limit. I'm not saying that happens, but I'm saying it's possible. So the speed limit is ideal, what everybody should drive, but it's also about safety and not putting yourself in harm's way, because there's a lot of crazy people out there behind the wheel. So do be careful. How does the fan sound with this test? Avery wants to know. I barely hear it. Of course, my air conditioner's on. You're hearing that in the background. I barely hear the fan. In fact, it's not once has it ramped up to a point that it's got my attention. Blackwatch says, I can remember watching mechanics test and rebuild starters and generator. Well, the fact that you called it a generator and not an alternator. On the bench, am I older? What? Yeah, well, world has changed. Yeah. It's not a skill many people have in the United States anymore, nor do they want it. Ben Fitzpatrick says, my mom got a new charger for her laptop. All she does is learn French from Rosetta Stone, email, and Facebook. Should my dad and I put on a solid state drive with more than 8 gig of RAM or no? What is the laptop? What processor does that laptop have? Adib Ali says, I've been a viewer since 2014. The first video I watched was the Windows 7 config build part 2. You should have watched part 1 first. Why'd you watch part 2 first? I'm so grateful to the loyal viewers. I don't know all of you. So unless you tell me, unless we talk regularly, like I've talked regularly with Bill Leatherland, so when I see his name, I know who he is. Some of you I may only speak to sporadically or only in the chat. Others I email back and forth on a regular basis. So that's how I know how long Bill Leatherland's been watching. But yeah, I recognize Ben Fitzpatrick's name. Isn't your name on the Threadripper build? That was the first community-sourced build that we did, Ben? Kevin Smith wants to know, are mini gaming PCs a thing you would recommend? Absolutely, yeah, if it meets your gaming needs, right? Some people, they want to play the latest AAA titles. And if you want to do that, they do make gaming mini PCs that are essentially laptops with the RTX 3070 built right onto the motherboard. And you're going to spend $1,000 plus for those. And if you want a more moderate gaming PC, something like the UM6, what did I say this was, a 690? UM560XT is sort of your entry level. And then you can also go up to like a GTR6 or the GTR7 from the folks at B-Link, or the Nook i7X or even the Nook i5X, which is a bit more affordable from the folks at Minisforum. If it meets your gaming needs, why not? Mortant said, almost a year, Carrie. It's been longer than that, hasn't it? Hey, my air conditioning is shutting off, so now we can maybe, if we listen carefully, maybe we can hear this. Yeah, it's not making a sound. Did the test finish? It looks like it finished. There's our final numbers right up here. You can't see me move that mouse. These are our final numbers right here, if that means anything to you. I was also going to see about maybe running that gaming benchmark on this, just to see what it'll look like. 3D Mark Spy. Let me copy this whole folder over here. VR wants to know if I still have the Intel Nook. I think he watched you build one about 10 years ago. So that Nook was built in April of 2013. It has been retired just a couple months ago. Finally retired it. It still works, but it's a little underpowered for the remote work that it's being used for. And it was upgraded, but we kept the Nook because it's got Lyle's picture on it. You know, it's a skin that came with the Nook, and you send it a photo and they send you the skin for free, some third-party maker that makes skins for devices. And so because it's got this unique picture of Lyle, and Lyle's not with us anymore, we decided to keep it for the skin. But it's also a backup, so if something should happen to the new Nook, then they could just simply plug the old NUC back in and use it to connect remotely to work. Otherwise, they have to get in the car and go to work, and they don't want to do that. Much prefer to work from home. I don't blame them. And so that new NUC, I think, I did the video here of me prepping it. I think it was a 12th gen that I put in, but I might be remembering it wrong. But that system, yeah, from April of 2013 until, well, I would say February of 2023. So yeah, it was almost 10 years. And it still works great. It's just that was an i3, you know. Yes, so Lyle got some tumors and his hips were going out. He couldn't stand anymore. And then he would fall down all the time and he kept injuring himself. And he had fallen in such a way that he twisted up his leg. And so his leg got all swollen. His belly was bloated from the tumor. And we felt that keeping him around was inhumane. He was ready. And they have services now that they'll come out to your house. So you don't have to put the dog in a sterile and unfamiliar environment. We're bringing it to the vet's office. The vet comes to the house where the dog is, you know, Lyle likes to lay out in the yard and lay in the sun. He was out there laying in the sun like he normally does, and the vet came out and we spent some time with him and he went to sleep, and that was the end of that. So we should all be so lucky to go in such a beautiful way. Of course, we got his ashes back and we have a little tribute to him. And Jimmy's still around. Jimmy's been a little sad. He's been a little mopey, but he's healthy and he's doing well physically. And, you know, with time, he'll get over it. And, you know, it opens the door for potentially another dog to be rescued if that opportunity exists. If there was a random dog running around, couldn't bring it in because we already had two. But now, if there's a dog running around, the opportunity to keep that dog exists as long as we only have Jimmy. So we'll see what the future holds. Now, I do not have this machine plugged into the network, so I'm not going to do any of the updates for the 3D Mark test here. I just want to see what kind of frame rates we're going to get. And I'm more concerned, obviously, for the testing I normally do, that Windows is updated. I made a big deal about that earlier. For this test, I don't care so much. I'm just kind of curious if it's going to be playable. I want to see if it's smooth. So we're about to find out. Colin Hunt contributes £5. Hey, Colin, thank you. David Dix at Rock City PC contributes $10. He says, man, I remember the old videos when the video editing software you used had music in the background. I was trying to be professional. I've been watching since 2009-ish. The past few years I haven't been around much, but I always watch. That's awesome. Thank you, David. Yeah, I was trying too hard. I started the channel in 2008. So for you to be a viewer since 2009, I mean, you're there right at the beginning. I don't think Google bought YouTube until 2007. And I think YouTube was created in 2005. 2 years later, it was sold to Google. And then at that point, oh, that's a little choppy. I would not consider that playable. Now, I don't know what resolution this is in, because obviously if we were to lower the res, we could make things playable. But that's not ideal. It's also possible that if I connected this to the network and got all the updates for this benchmark, it might make this test run more smoothly. The default is 1440. Well, that would explain it. If we're at 1440, that's way too much for this little machine to handle. Let me see if I can interrupt it. Is there a way to change the... Is it going to let me do it? It's not letting me interrupt it. Oh, you know what? My keyboard's flashing that it's not connected to the dongle. Try that again. Options. Let's see, is that under options? GPU count, centered screen resolution. You might have to pay for it to lower the res on it. Scaled resolution. Let's do 1920 by 1080. Now, how do I run it with that setting? I don't know if it's going to take that setting or not. My phone is beeping because it sounds like Amazon just delivered a package. So I'm going to go check that here while we're waiting for that to complete. And of course, if you have any questions for me, do leave them in the chat and I will do my best to provide answers. And also, other members of our community might be providing you answers as well. So be sure to look for their answers. Love knowing when someone's at the door or around the house. These wireless cameras are fantastic. I cannot stress enough how beneficial they are. So this doesn't look like it's running in 1980 by 1080, 1920 by 1080. It looks like it's at the exact same resolution it was at before. You might have to pay for it for that to work. All right. So at 1080 gaming, I'm sure this is going to be acceptable. I don't really game anymore, so I don't have any games to load on it to show you. I imagine there will be another half dozen YouTube reviews from other content creators that do that kind of testing. Like I say, this unit just came out. Joshua says 10 years out of an Intel NUC is quite the payoff. Yeah, and that was a brand new model. They'd never made the NUCs before. There was nothing to compare it to. So I didn't want to put a lot of money into it, which is why I got the i3. In retrospect, I wish I would have gotten at least an i5. If I did, that machine would probably not need to be replaced. Piter says, thank you for the 3D test. I appreciate it. It was curious. Jim KJ3N says, under benchmarks, there are other less demanding tests. Yeah, I just wanted to run sort of the standard to kind of get the gist of what it was going to do. Let's see. I should have, do I have OBS on here? I think I do. It's on one of these flash drives. Let's see. These look like a bunch of video files. So that's not, so these are like clips and things from my channel. I think this one is kind of like a backup for me for OBS and OBS settings. So let me see. Yeah. So OBS is a free download, but I've already got it, so I download it again. Let's install OBS on this thing, which is what I use to broadcast, open broadcast software, OBS. It's free. And the OBS Studio directory, that is my, my configuration. So while it is possible that you can just back up the config in a file, I just take the whole directory. So if we launch OBS, let's see here. to just cancel the setup because I don't need the, oh, the internal microphone on this thing is working. All right, so here's how I recover my OBS settings. This is a real old school way to do it. I right click and I choose copy. I go to the C drive and I have to go to the users folder, and the username is user on this machine, and I have to view hidden folders and files, which should be, is it under show? Hidden items, and you'll see this hidden folder called app data, and then we go to roaming, and you'll see there's an OBS Studio directory. We're going to just paste right on top of that one. Replace the files that match. And now when I bring up OBS, it's going to have all of my scenes, all of my settings, all my configuration. It's that easy. The OBS directory is very small. Of course, we have to give OBS permission to access the network, and none of my assets, none of my videos, the intro videos are there. So OBS is saying I can't find this stuff, and that's fine. And OBS can find it for me if I wanted to, but I have not copied those files over yet. And so this is exactly what the OBS screen looks like that I'm looking at over on the streaming PC. And what I can do is we can take this flash drive out of here. We're done with that, and I'll keep it over here. Is I can grab a USB capture device. So for the sake of clarity, let me make everything big on camera 1. And I'm going to grab this Cloner Alliance USB capture card that I reviewed a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. So here's the USB capture device. And then in the box, we need to go from, we can go Type C to Type C now that I think about it. Well, heck, here's a USB Type C to Type A cable. And this is everything that comes with this device. We're going to plug that in here. And we will plug in this over here, like so. And I don't think I need a driver. I think it just auto loads. Let me just verify that. We're going to go back over to HDMI input. And I got to use this, well, I got to go full screen on my side. And then let me just close this out and give it a chance to see if it's acknowledged that USB capture device. Let's look in Device Manager and see if it's in there. I don't see any problems in here. Live streaming audio device. All right. So I should be able to go back to OBS Studio. Again, I can't find any of those assets, of course. We're going to add a new video capture device. We'll call it video capture device. That's fine. Click OK. Live streaming video device. OK. And I've got an HDMI cable here. And to keep life simple, I can plug in the overhead camera. Let me move the overhead camera. And let me go over to camera 1 again so you can see what I'm doing. It's difficult to keep going back and forth here. But we'll just grab a regular HDMI cable, and we'll run it out of the overhead camera and into the capture device here. Now this is a pass-through capture device, so you could plug your console on the in side, and then on the out would go to your monitor. Then I have to turn this camera on. And let's switch back over now. Hey, look at this. Now what's really cool is I can go full screen on my side, full screen here. Colors don't seem right though, do they? I have the cables plugged in all the way. Sometimes I don't have the cables plugged in all the way. And then we can go full screen. But you can see how quick it is. There's no delay, there's no latency there. I am very curious why our colors are so different. That should be bright red. Let me take a quick look in properties. None of that should matter. Well, because I copied OBS over, I should have all my same OBS settings. I wonder, we turn the camera off and back on again. And I also want to just double check the other end of the cable's plugged in good. Okay, that looks good. I'll bring the camera back on. Yeah, I wonder why that's showing that weird color. Just for grins and giggles, I'm going to switch the USB port. I'm going to unplug the capture device and plug it to, another USB 3 port back here. Which wouldn't make any sense to me that would help, but I'm going to try it anyway. Of course, the video's frozen now because I've moved the USB device. Yeah, so now I'm going to have to restart OBS. So I will exit out of OBS and we'll restart OBS again. Cancel that, turn that back on. Yeah, okay, it's working. So the question is, what's going on with the color? That's got nothing to do with the computer. It may be a setting on the camera. I don't know. That's really bizarre. You know what? Let me try something. If we take that same image, let me think about this for a minute. How do I want to do this? If I take the HDMI cable off this mini PC, we're going to lose video here, and I'm going to plug it into this overhead camera. I want to see if the colors carry over or if the colors are correct. The colors are correct. So it's either the capture device. Yeah. Let me unplug that, and I'll plug this one back in. But that's not the computer. And I will plug this one back in over there. Yeah, the colors are all washed out. But at least I know it's not a camera setting. There may be a driver that we have to put in for this to get our colors accurate. I mean, it does say it's plug and play. So I'm not sure. Oh, you know what else we can try? Is a simple reboot. Sometimes when you add new hardware, it doesn't really register until you reboot. And this is a good way for us to test what our shutdown and startup time are on this new PC here. It shut down pretty quick. Everything is live and in real time, so let's see what it looks like booting it back up. Glenn's Music says it needs more printer toner. That's the problem. All right, so now we're back up into Windows, and then I will start OBS again. Cancel that. So it's something to do with the capture card. That much I'm certain of. Why, I don't know. Out of curiosity, though, we could try a USB Type-C if I unplug this from here. And let's use one of the Type-C ports up front. Let's see if that makes it angry. Exit that, open it back up again. Cancel. Video capture device isn't being seen now on the USB Type-C. Oh, there it is. So consistently, something with the capture device is affecting our color accuracy. It's not a setting in the camera. The white balance on the camera is perfectly fine. I know my cables are good, and we know the PC is good, and we know the USBs are working. There may be a driver for this that has to be installed. I wonder if I have a different capture device I can use. You know what? I'm pretty sure I do. I should have, let's see, somewhere, brand new in a box, I should have an Elgato USB. Where did I put it? That is the million-dollar question. Oh, right in front of my face? No, that's an internal capture card, Gary. Oh, the other one in front of my face? Yeah, that would probably help. All right, I hate if I'm making the mini PC look bad because I'm using an unfamiliar capture card. I have this Elgato Camlink 4K that I've never opened. It's still completely sealed. I've never taken this out of the box. So, why don't we do that now? And that will prove to you that it's not a white balance problem, it's not a lighting problem, it's not a cable problem. It's some configuration of this capture card, which, you know, I would think I would not have to configure if it's advertised as plug and play. So let's see how that compares with the Camlink. HDMI goes on that end. That plugs into USB. I don't even need any cables. Look at that. So I'll unplug this one. If it will unplug. It's really holding it in there. There it goes. And we'll grab this HDMI cable from here and we'll plug it in to the Elgato Camlink, and then we will plug that into the USB 3.0 Type A port here in the back. And then we'll give that a second. I hope it loads the driver automatically. Let me exit out of this and let's open it up one more time. Cancel that. Right click, go to properties, and let's choose, hopefully the Elgato device is in there. Yep, Camlink 4K, and the colors are perfect. But the resolution is massive because I think it's at 4K. Let me just do that. That is a better color representation. Ironic, isn't it? That the device itself is the thing I was looking at, but now our colors are correct. So it's got to be driver related or there's some software, but that's all I need to stream, just that little device and a camera. And the audio is carried through this cable as well. So if I take this full screen, for example, right click, full screen, here I am. And you'll see it's very quick. You don't see any blurring or So what I would have to do to actually stream from this is plug an Ethernet cable into the back, stop the main streamer from broadcasting, and then tell this, but this is exactly the picture you're going to get. I've just kind of cheated here. So yeah, you can absolutely and very easily stream with this computer. You don't need that big monstrosity with all the RGB I've got behind me, and you don't need to spend $4,500 like I did. But I also use that for video editing, so there you go. Now, let me go back to camera 1. There I am. And I will shut this off. And move this out of the way. How cool is that? And that goes into the close-up camera over there. So before I get all my cables mixed up, let me just take a minute and put this back where it belongs, or I'm going to be in a world of hurt the next time I need it, and I can't figure out why it's not working. All right. Yeah, that's the CamLink 4K unit there. So I'll have to make a note to myself that this requires a little configuration before going live with it. This one you can just plug in and start using. Good to know. Did I not have this had a little wire tie on it. Things are getting messy over here. Let me put this cable away. This is just a spare HDMI cable got laying around. And I plugged it into the close-up camera, which is the wrong cable. Wrong cable. Did not mean to plug that one in. It's got to be this one over here. This one is the close-up camera. The other one is just a spare HDMI cable. Okay, does anybody have any questions for me? Anything I've left out? Anything you want to know? Please ask in the chat room. If you've asked a question that I have not responded to, it's because I haven't seen it. So please do ask your question again. I am now paying attention. OBS has an update to 29.1. Oh, do they? Let's take a quick look over here. Let's go to, usually OBS automatically updates me at startup. You are correct. There is a 29.1. Good to know. Thank you for that. I'm surprised OBS did not ask me if I wanted to update as soon as I started it. I know it wouldn't on this one because I don't have the internet plugged in. I'm referring to this one. But when I do a manual check for update, it does show there is a new version out. I always look forward to a new version of OBS. I don't even know why. I just, like, hey, it's great to see the product continue to evolve regardless. That it's not just stagnating and kind of being abandoned. So I always have the latest version of OBS installed. Or I intend to, I should say. All right, that's my HDMI cable. I'll just set that there. And then I want to put these cables back. Yeah, I don't need a wire tie for that. This piece goes back in here. These are documentation. That goes back there. David Rivera says, for everyday use in gaming, is there a major difference between DDR4 and DDR5? Major, no. No, generally when you're going from one generation to the next generation, the difference is 10%. That includes RAM, CPUs, just about anything really. If you wait a couple of generations, then the difference gets, the gap between the older and the newer is a bigger gap the older something is or the newer something is. So right now, DDR5 is still relatively new. It's still being developed and still a lot of incompatibility issues out there and timing issues. So if you're buying, this is the way I see it. If you're spending a ton of money on your build, so you want the latest, you want a 13900 KS, if you want to take full advantage, and that includes that little extra 10%, then you want DDR5. On the other hand, if what you want is something more affordable, you probably in real world applications aren't going to notice any difference between DDR4 and 5 in regards to performance. But it also depends on the game you play, the version of the game, the resolution and settings that you're playing, where it could actually make an impact on the gameplay on a very demanding game with very demanding settings, where that 10% could be the difference you were looking for. But you will pay for that. I mean, it will cost you dearly for that. But to answer your question, just between DDR4 and DDR5, is there a major difference? No, it's a minor difference, if you even notice it at all. You would need a high-end CPU to even begin to notice it. Arnold says, no questions from me, Carrie. I'm still in learn mode. Well, that's the point of the questions. It's to help you learn. All right, we'll put that one away. We'll put this one away. Thanks over to Phil at Minisforum. Phil's my contact over there who's been very helpful in helping me acquire these units for review. So if you're watching, Phil, thank you so much. And I think we have 2 more Minisforum PCs coming. One I purchased, the NAD 9, and then there's a NAB, N-A-B, 6. And that one's really cool. These are very different form factors. Well, I should say they're different in their execution. With the NAB 6, there's no screws to remove to get into the machine. You just tap on the lid and it opens up. And it's silver instead of black, I think. The NAD 9 is a bit larger. It's an i9 Intel CPU, and I've ordered that bare bones for, I think it was $479. I'll put my own solid state drive in it, my own RAM, and my own operating system, and I'll have a machine that's likely faster than this one. What am I going to use it for? I have no idea. The specs are amazing, and the way it looks is unlike other mini PCs. I'm really a big fan of being different. So, you know, this UM560 looks a lot like other models, like the 773, because it's essentially the same thing with upgraded internals. And by doing that, they can keep the price lower, that they're not re-engineering everything from scratch again, right? So if we can recycle or repurpose the case design, if we can repurpose the motherboard and simply make some engineering changes to the board, then overall cost of manufacture is less, and therefore the cost to the consumer will be less. That's the idea behind it anyway. And let me scroll through the chat and see what I've been missing here. Is 1.5 megabits per second on internet fast enough to live stream OBS? No, it will not be. No. You'll want at least 8 megabit, at least if you want to broadcast at 1080, you need 8 megabits per second minimum for 1080 live broadcast. If you want to record a video and then produce the video as a file and upload the file, then it doesn't matter what your speed is. Once YouTube has the file and processes it, you know, it'll just take longer to upload the file. But once YouTube has it, it'll play flawlessly. But for live broadcast, you want at least 8 megabits per second for a 1080. And you want about 35 megabits per second for 4K live streaming. Dennis wants to know, what hardware would you recommend for streaming? Well, it depends. Are you gaming, or are you just going to be a talking head? Are you doing like educational videos like I'm doing, or is it, you know, more like a Zoom meeting? Or are you wanting to game and stream at the same time? Andy wants to know, what's my favorite mini PC so far? Well, that's an easy one. Let me go back here and I will show it to you. This right here is my favorite. This is the Minisforum Nook i7X. This has an RTX 3070, I think, in there. Now I gotta verify the specs because I don't want to tell you wrong. Let me go over to my Windows Capture. Yeah, let's do Windows Capture for the OBS site. Did I say the OBS site? The Minisforum site. Shop. This is Intel. And it's this unit right here. And then they have an i5 version of this, which looks like it's sold out with like a 3050 graphics card. This is the i7. It's an 11800H mobile CPU with an NVIDIA laptop 3070 graphics card. And this one I've got was bare bones, which it looks like they might be sold out of at $889 for bare bones. I put my own RAM and solid state drive in it. And of course I put my own operating system in it. And I've got a full review on this unit, including opening it up. If you look back at my channel history, that one is my favorite one because there's no limits on this thing. I can do anything I want with this. With one exception, I cannot install an internal capture card for obvious reasons. But I will say there's a couple other units that I like. I like the GTR 6, and I think the GTR 7, which is going to come out any day now, will probably replace my like of the GTR 6 for a mini gaming PC. And the Minisforum NAD9, NAD9, I think that's gonna almost be a tie with this bad boy right here. But again, part of the thing I like about this unit is it doesn't look like anything else. A lot of these mini PCs all look alike. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't thrill me. It doesn't give me the same internal excitement that I get from something that doesn't conform. This is not conforming. This is very different. Nothing else looks like it. It's very distinctive, and it's not all show. This is show and go. It does both very, very well. Andy Kane says you can still use an external capture card. Of course, yeah, but I like to have 4 inputs. So for me to use an external capture card means I'd have to use like a video switcher that I can control picture-in-picture and putting multiple inputs on the same time, and then I don't have room on my desk for it. And then you take the master out on that and go into the capture card with it. That would work. My preference is that I have the 4-port input, HDMI input card inside of the computer, and that's why I like that little Nook i5 Extreme that I showcased here a couple of weeks ago. As a backup streamer, if something should happen to this, I can just pull a little Nook up there, which is a little 5-liter PC, It's bigger than this, but way smaller than that, and it takes the full-size capture card. And yeah, it's only an i5, but streaming like what I'm doing, it doesn't take a lot of power for that. Starshine wants to know, are the global keys for Microsoft Office movable, or are they one machine only? The movable product keys are $400, and the permanent one machine only product keys are $26. So you could buy almost, what, $15, $16, $26 Office 2016 product keys, or you could buy one retail Microsoft Office key at Microsoft price, which I think is $450. Which one is saving you money? All of the product keys that I promote are one install only. If you want to be able to install multiple times, then you buy multiple one install copies. What I recommend people do, and especially when it comes to Microsoft Office, once you have your computer set up the way you like it, you've got Windows activated, you've got your Microsoft Office installed, activated, you've got all your updates installed, then make a backup image of your computer. Acronis is very easy to use, it's very inexpensive. Heck, even just download the 30-day trial of Acronis and make a full image backup of your computer. Then if anything happens, not only will you save time from having to reinstall everything and redo all the updates and reset up your wallpaper, your icons, all your programs, and your printer and your email, you just need to use Acronis to restore that image you made, and within 10 minutes it'll restore everything for most people, and all your activations are all reactivated again. The only time that won't work is if you're restoring to a different motherboard. If you restore to a different motherboard, then none of the activations will work again, because that's piracy. That's how it's seen. But yeah, you can buy Office 2016 over at VIP CDK deals, and you don't need to have a Microsoft account to activate it, which is super handy. So if we look, for example, at the video notes under this video, you'll see I've got links to VIP CDK deals for Windows 10, Windows 11, Office 2021, 2019, and 2016. You can buy Office 2016, I think it's like $26 after you use the coupon code. And just trying to find for some reason, my YouTube Studio is like lagging an hour. It's showing me a video that I did an hour ago. So I have to refresh my screen. It's very confusing that it hasn't kept up. But anyway, all the links are in the video notes. And once you activate it, it's active. It will not deactivate itself. But if you have to install it again somewhere else, you'll need to spend the $26 again. Or if you don't want to have to spend the $26 every time you want to reactivate, every time you move it, then buy the $450 Office from Microsoft, and then you can reactivate it a number of times. David Graham says, if you have a Microsoft account, you can move any key. I have 4, and I move them around all the time. 2 are Windows 7 machines upgraded to Windows 11. I can't verify whether or not that's true. I don't use a Microsoft account, so I don't know how that would work. I can tell you that VIP CDK deals does not guarantee you can reactivate the product. It's just going to activate the once. It's going to stay activated unless you do something like you wipe your computer and reinstall everything. But why you wouldn't have just made a restore from a backup, maybe you like doing things the hard way, but they won't support you beyond that initial activation, just so you know. And that's why it's so inexpensive. I think Microsoft is moving away from selling the retail licenses because the support costs are too great. People now want personal one-on-one tutoring because they don't know how to do something, and they're calling technical support. That's not what technical support is for. It is not there to be your private tutor. Technical support is to resolve any issues that exist with the software or hardware you purchase, not to personally teach you on a one-on-one over the phone how to use it. As a result, support costs have gone through the roof, and it's costing Microsoft way too much money. So as far as Microsoft is concerned, they would rather not sell the retail products so that they're not held legally, they're not obligated to answer your support questions. Because not quite often they're not support questions, they're tutoring questions. Marsman wants to know if you restore to the same model motherboard, will it reactivate? No, it's a different motherboard. It doesn't matter, it's the same model. The serial number on the board changes, the product recognizes that as piracy. Now, according to Microsoft's own policies, you can reactivate a single OEM Windows license on a repaired motherboard, but you have to call Microsoft and explain that to them, and then they can manually over the phone approve your reactivation. Yeah. Sean Bullen says, hello, Kerry. Live love from Chicago. What's the funniest and easy repair you've ever done since your show started? Are there any funny memories? Sometimes it's just a simple matter of a plug not being plugged in. I don't know that it's funny, but in most cases, most repairs I don't really find to be funny, but they can be quite surprising in their simplicity, for sure. Politically Incorrect says, it is true when you have a Microsoft account, it saves your licenses to your account. He says he has over 20 keys to varying products on his Microsoft account. Yeah, well, okay. I'm not familiar, so I'll take your word for it. I appreciate the information. I cannot sign into a Microsoft account on my client computers because that would be a severe concern of privacy for both me and them. So I don't use one. Kevin Smith wants to know, is the 200R Corsair still your favorite computer case? It's my favorite for business use, yes. So Microsoft is going to obviously give you incentives to create that Microsoft account. They're pushing it hard, you know, even to the point where Windows 11, like Windows 11 Home, it forces you to have an internet connection unless you know how to hit Shift F10 and type in the OOBE slash what is it, something NRO. It's bypass NRO, which is just a registry entry. I don't like how aggressive Microsoft is being with forcing people to create Microsoft accounts. But that's not to say you shouldn't do it. It's just I don't do it. But good to know, good to know. Duncany said, CDK Deals sent me to Microsoft account login to activate Office 2016. So I don't know what VIP CDK Deals is sending to people, but I can tell you, like on that Galaxy Book 3, I just put Office 2016 on it, and I always do it the same way. I already have the downloaded image, I install it, I just copy and paste the key from my purchase history on VIP CDK Deals, and I never sign into a Microsoft account. I'm not suggesting that's the only way to do it and there's no other options. I'm only telling you the way that I do it and what I'm familiar with. Sean says, I picked up a new Samsung Evo 250 gig drive. It's not for gaming, just basic operation with a genuine Windows 10 key. My client is just checking her email. Her PC is an Intel Core i5 8th gen. Will it help? If you're moving from a mechanical storage drive to an SSD, regardless of what the computer is, it will always make a very big difference to the end user. It'll seem faster, it'll boot faster, It'll seem more responsive. Even the slowest solid state drive you can buy is a massive improvement over any mechanical hard drive. But at the end of the day, ask your customer. Install it for your customer, and then ask your customer, does this seem better to you? And listen to what your customer says. It doesn't matter what I have to say. And then take that information, chalk it up as part of your experience, and as you're making and advising other customers for potential upgrades, you'll have a better idea of what to expect from your own personal experience and from the experience of interacting with your customers. Sean says, okay, yes, I will ask her first, just asking the mad scientist. Yeah, it's generally the best upgrade you can do universally. Like nearly everybody, regardless of what kind of computer they have, if they're using a mechanical drive, a solid state drive will make a more noticeable difference in performance than any other type of upgrade. CPU upgrade, RAM upgrade, those, some might not to the end user make any difference. But going from a hard drive to a solid state drive as your main boot drive, always, in my experience, has a positive reaction from the customer saying, holy cow, it's like a brand new computer. Or even sometimes they say, the computer wasn't even this fast when it was new, which would also be accurate. Bikeman said, I'm still a nervous wreck on SSD writes here, so try to write my downloads to mechanical drive and limit my writes to my M2 NVMe boot drive. I probably write on my NVMe drive on that 8th gen laptop I've got, I probably write somewhere between 40 and 60 gigs every day to it. And that's on average. Some days will be less. Like when I produce some of the videos that I'm making here live, I reproduce them over on, I upscale them to 4K and produce them on the laptop. And those files are about 42 to 48 gigs for a 3-hour live video at 1080 being rendered at 4K. And I've never seen a solid state drive fail because it had too many writes. I think you're being overly cautious, and I think you have no justification. I don't think you've ever seen a drive fail from too many writes. I think your mind has been poisoned from information on the internet that doesn't hold true to reality. But you don't have to change what you're doing if that just makes you feel better to save to a slower, less reliable mechanical drive. Don't let me get in your way, but what a shame for you to have this amazing technology and you're afraid to use it or you're afraid to wear it out. The lifetime of a solid state drive is 3 times longer than an average hard drive. Bikeman says total written since the first install on December 25th of 2021 is 31.4 terabytes. That's nothing. That's nothing. Where's let me see if I have a box with a new unit in it. Here's Samsung 970 Evo Plus. What is our mean time before failure? And this isn't an expiration date. This isn't like when you hit this number, it's going to die. These are estimates. You would have to be at, well, I guess I can just Google it. Let's Google 970 Evo Plus, what's that called? TBW limit. 1,200 terabytes. 1,200. So you're at 31. It's nothing. I think you'd be hard pressed to reach 1,200 terabytes if you tried on purpose to just needlessly write crap to your drive, it would take you years. 1,200 terabytes written, and that's an estimate. That's a 5-year warranty on these. 1,200 terabytes. So when you tell me you've got 31, it's like, that's still new. Duncan, he said, I had a Samsung 970 EVO just die after 5 years. That's not a long lifespan. Yeah, but that's not normal. Okay, you know, you could also say you chopped off your finger by mistake with a kitchen knife. That's not normal. Regular folks don't encounter that incident with that knife. You're an exception, and exceptions are part of life. Life is not a video game. Life is not a simulation. Life is not a machine to be programmed. It's filled with chaos. It's filled with inconsistency. So when we're talking about statistics, some people don't seem to understand the difference between statistics and forecasting the future. I can't forecast the future, but I have to maintain as best I can the integrity of my business. So I'm going to choose parts that I know are very reliable. I'm going to choose parts I know are from reputable manufacturers that don't eat into my profit line or make me too expensive for customers to buy from me. And I want statistically to put into my favor to reduce the odds of a customer having to call me for a part failure, whether it's a power supply, motherboard, CPU, a cooling fan, a storage drive, a monitor, a backup drive, a keyboard, a mouse, all of that I potentially get calls for. And no matter how much I do to protect myself against support calls still come in. But theoretically, I am reducing the number of support calls because support costs me money. And the more support I have to do, the angrier the customers get, the angrier I get, and the less money I make, and the less likely the customer is going to buy from me again. So I would never say that if you buy a particular item or a particular brand, that you're not going to experience a problem. What I am going to say is that you are less likely going to experience the problem. But rest assured, because people are the way they are, the minute you say something, there's always going to be that person that's going to say, not me. There's going to be that one person that will challenge you. But they're missing the point. When people do that, they're not listening. I'm talking about averages, and I'm talking about likelihood, statistically speaking. I work on computers for a living. I bet you I've seen more computers, I've touched more computers and repaired more computers than you've ever seen in your lifetime. And I have yet to see one of these go bad. Does that mean that I said these don't go bad? That is not what I said. Michael Dane contributes $5 in Super Chat. He says he just gave away an 11700K system to a veteran's family. Wow, that's a pretty nice giveaway. Well done. Thank you for your contribution. Duncan, he says, statistically, I'm okay, unlike my Samsung 970. Mind you, he says the Samsung 990 Pro is okay, despite internet scares of it going to die. I haven't heard anything about the 990 Pros having a problem. I know the 980s had a firmware update that was highly recommended. But I'm not on top of everything all the time. But the good news is when it's under warranty, Samsung is a great company when it comes to honoring warranty, reaching out to customer service. And I find in business that the companies that have the best customer service are typically the customers from which you are least likely needing to call customer service. Viable Solutions says, Carrie, a quick question. If I have Quick Boot turned on and it won't allow me to press delete to go into the BIOS, is there another way to get into the BIOS? The PC keeps turning off the keyboard when booting. Yeah, just go to your Windows Update in the control panel and then go to Recovery and choose Advanced Startup. And then it's going to say restarting, but it's not going to restart. It's going to take you to another page, and boot to UEFI BIOS is an option. You click that, and upon the reboot, it'll take you into your BIOS. I've demonstrated that here so many times. Michael says, my last computer giveaway for the year will be an 11700K with an Asus 590 motherboard, 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM with a terabyte NVMe for a veteran and his family for internet and school use. He's taken summer off. Hey, you know what? That is easily a $1,000 computer. That's a very generous giveaway. John Williams says, Carrie, a friend brought his laptop to me, said it would not get to the sign-in screen. The wireless dongle was causing it not to boot up. You should have seen the look on his face. It's always got to check the easy things first. Duncan, he says they updated a friend from a mechanical hard drive to a solid state drive, and yeah, they were astounded at the speed difference. It's pretty universal, yeah. Glenn's Music says, maybe I should go back to a mechanical drive just to reappreciate the difference. Yeah, maybe you should. David Rivera says, when upgrading a motherboard and CPU, I know it's important to do a fresh install of Windows, but would all of my data and other drives stop working? Data doesn't work. I don't know what you mean by data working. Programs work. Data doesn't work. Data is literally just data. It doesn't work. Data is not a program. Data is data. So for example, a picture. If you had a bunch of pictures on the other drive, say you had a D drive and you put all your pictures on your D drive, and you reformat and reinstall your C drive with a new copy of Windows, are your pictures still on the D drive? Yes, they are. But let's say you had Word documents on your D drive, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and then you wiped in your C drive and reinstalled Windows, but you did not reinstall Office. Your data is still there on the D drive, but you have no way to open it without a program to read the data. So a program to read pictures is built into Windows. So if you have a built-in program in Windows that reads that data, the data is going to open just like it always has. If you've got TurboTax data but you don't reinstall TurboTax, the data doesn't do you much good. If you've got QuickBooks data but you don't have the QuickBooks software, the data's fine, you just have no way to look at it without reinstalling the program that's associated to the data. That's why we make backups. Putting the data on another drive is just doubling your chance of a drive failure. If you only have one drive, then you only have one drive that can fail. And reinstalling Windows is so 1995. Really, there's no reason to reinstall Windows. At least if you have to reinstall it, there's no reason to format a drive. So your data is not any safer on another drive. In fact, like I said, if you have one drive, you only have one drive that can fail. If you have two drives, you've now doubled the statistical likelihood of experiencing a drive failure. So, just so you know, just because you choose to look at something from this angle doesn't mean you can't also look at it from the other angle. Sometimes, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. That's a quote from Wayne Dyer that I appreciate that quote because it's very true. Viable Solutions contributes €2. He says, thanks for the advice, Carrie. Appreciate it. Right on, Viable Solutions. Thank you for supporting the channel. Wintermute's also suggesting if you want to get into the BIOS that you hold down your Shift key on your keyboard and hit restart while holding Shift down. And if it's a UEFI BIOS, it should kick you into the BIOS. I've seen that sometimes work and sometimes not work. I prefer to do the recovery option. Bruce says, Carrie, good job with the stream. Thank you, Bruce. David Graham says, program data can be hard to transfer depending on the program. But if it's on a C drive, then it's lost if you wipe. Yeah, I can't see any reason why anybody would wipe a C drive ever since pretty much Windows 7. That's just an old-fashioned way of doing something. I'd say give up the old-fashioned way and catch up with the rest of us here. But you should always have a backup, a duplicate copy of any important data stored outside of the building. Use Google Drive, use Microsoft OneDrive. There's so many services out there. Or at the very least, get a USB drive and copy your stuff to a USB drive, but keep the USB drive unplugged. Because if you always leave it plugged in and your computer gets a virus or a power spike, you've just kissed your backup goodbye. And then Bruce mentions, unless you have BitLocker on. Yeah, well, that's a whole other can of worms, but you did that to yourself. You'll get no sympathy from me. Hey, speaking of the BIOS, let's take a look at the BIOS on this machine. I didn't do that, did I? Let's go back over to HDMI input over here. And I still have OBS running on there. So if I want to get into the BIOS on this, and let's say I've got fast boot on, so it's difficult to get the timing right. I'll go to the gear icon. Now this is Windows 11, but it's the same. Windows Update, and then I want to go to, let's see, where did they move it? Update history, Advanced Options, Recovery, Advanced Startup, Restart Now. Now watch what happens. We're going to just wait. And we should get an advanced startup menu that pops up here. Now on Windows 10, it doesn't actually restart like this. So Windows 11 has changed this a bit, but let me familiarize myself with it here. Okay, troubleshoot, advanced options, UEFI firmware settings, and now restart, and now it's going to reboot into the BIOS. I don't have to push any keys. I just have to stand here staring at the screen and using the power of my mind get into the BIOS. There it is. It's like magic. Pretty cool, huh? Sorcery, Joshua says. Mark Gaines says, good night, Carrie, and everyone in the chat. Hey, thanks for joining us, Mark. Hopefully we'll see you again here very soon, and thanks for your continued support of the channel, of course. Viable Solutions asks, Carrie, going from the first couple of PCs you ever built, did you ever think PCs would become as powerful and as fast as they are now? Yes, yeah. I didn't foresee gaming becoming more movie-like, and I certainly didn't foresee movies using gaming for special effects, like how they make The Mandalorian is fascinating, that they basically use the Unreal Engine to create the scenery and put up giant monitors behind the actors, so instead of acting behind a green screen, they can actually point at and see the very thing that would be replaced on a green screen in post-production. So now the actors are, to be an actor would be so much easier to understand your environment when you just look around. And what's cool is they put the, when the camera turns, the whole background image moves. It's really cool. It's tied to the camera, to the main camera. So that's the Unreal Game Engine being used in professional television and movie production. I never saw that coming. That is, as games were getting more movie-like, like games like Wing Commander, and they have the cutscenes. It seemed it was one direction. It was games were trying to be more like movies, and will games one day replace movies was along my thought. But it never occurred to me that the game's graphics would get so realistic that movie production companies can use the game engines to create their backgrounds and avoid post-production or a lot of the post-production costs. Because a lot of times, like they talk about in The Mandalorian, when they were using it, the initial thought was this will be kind of an idea for the actors to go off of what's going to be the final scene. It turns out those graphics were so good, they didn't have to put them back in post-production. They were able to use exactly what they had. It completely changed the budget and the possibilities with set building and everything that goes across making certain things too expensive to film. Science fiction is very expensive to film. So if your ratings aren't really good, your show's going to get canceled because it costs more to make than it's generating in views. So by being able to reduce the cost by using the game engine for backgrounds, yeah, that blows my mind. I never would have thought of that. David Graham contributes $5 in Super Chat. He says, "You're the greatest, have some sugar." Right on. Thank you, David. Bruce Lucas says, "Carrie, we always felt bad for customers that brought in their Surface tablet only to find out they had BitLocker on it by default." Yeah, I mean, what can you do? I mean, they did it. Or somebody did it. Joshua says he's got to go. Good evening. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us, Joshua. Any final questions with regards to this mini PC or mini PCs in general? Anybody here interested in this particular unit? Michael Dane says people who play Diablo 4, there will be free play weekend May 12th through the 14th at Server Slam. Michael Dane says they say AI will be perfected by 2030. Well, it'll never be perfect. That'll never occur. There's no such thing as perfect. But the development of AI is going to happen very, very quickly for sure. It's already happening very quickly. Avery wants to know why I don't like using i3 CPUs. Well, any i3 or Ryzen 3 CPU is only a few dollars less than the Ryzen 5 or Core i5. And when you're spending that little bit of money, then the length of time that that computer is going to be useful to you is shortened. I can't build an i3 computer that's going to be an 8-year build. It's not possible. There's got to be a minimum of i5 if you reasonably want to expect to get 8 years out of it. So if you buy an i3, I would not guarantee that for 8 years. Absolutely would put me out of business because it's going to get obsolete faster. So the Nook i3 that I had, that I did in April of 2013, it was hurting for the last couple of years. It really did need to be replaced. In fact, as soon as the pandemic set in and using it for remote access, it should have been replaced because it really wasn't fast enough for that. We did not know that that was going to be more permanent, that remote work was going to be anything more than a few weeks. So there was no justification at that time so the computer was only being used on weekends. But as soon as the pandemic set in, then the computer was being used daily and on weekends. And its dependency went from a novelty toy to, I need this for work. But initially the thought was that it was going to be just a couple weeks. And the company kept saying over and over, they want people back in the office. And then the pandemic would die down and then it would resurge again. And I mean, they had dates. You're going to be back in the office by Tuesday. And then that Friday, another variant came out. And that happened about 4 times. So when it became pretty obvious to me that things weren't going to change anytime soon, and that computer was struggling, that it gave a good life, you know, no complaints, but it really needed to be upgraded. Now, in 2013, if I'd have put an i7 NUC in play instead of the i3, it would have cost me more money, but I would not have needed to replace it yet. So yes, i3s cost less, but they don't have the lifespan of an i5 or an i7 or an i9 with regards to usability. Like, yeah, it still powers on, it still boots into Windows, but it's not going to be Windows 11 compliant. Or for that matter, an i7 from that same era also would not be Windows 7 compliant, so I'm not sure that's a valid argument. But just, you don't have as many resources. And as you keep using the computer, and we generally start demanding more from our computers, right? We're taking more pictures with our phones, and we're listening to Spotify, and we're doing all these other things that we weren't doing years ago, because perhaps those things didn't even exist, or the megapixel size of a picture was a fraction of what it is today. So by getting at least an i5, you can reasonably get 8 years out of an i5 or better. You can expect 8 years of a usable computer. The i3, not to drive this point any further, you're getting something for now. It's not really good for the future. You will outgrow it much quicker than an i5 or an i7. And the same is true with the Ryzen 3. Pioneer said his dad uses an i3 3240. Wow, that's old. He says it still works pretty well. He uses them in his business. Yeah, well, it depends on what you use it for, right? So with remote work, there's a remote desktop. There's also VoIP phones. There's also the connection client, the encryption client, and it's all bogging down the processor. So if all you're doing is opening up emails or browsing the web, yeah, an old i3 is probably going to be just fine, at least until the end of support for Windows 10 in October 14th of 2025. Yeah. I don't want to sell and support i3s because the price difference between the i3 and the i5, it's only a few dollars, like maybe $40. If you're going to drop $300 on a brand new computer, what's another 40 bucks? And in exchange for that, you get a much longer, statistically speaking, useful lifespan out of it. I think a lot of you don't understand what it is to be in business. If I sold a customer a computer that was an i3, and the customer's buying it because they can't believe what a great deal it is, never mind reliability. Let's assume I'm sticking all name brand stuff in there. It's just as reliable. But now, let's say 4 years from now, a customer calls me and says, I'm trying to use QuickBooks, or I'm trying to open this Excel spreadsheet that's massive, and it's taking forever. Can you fix it? And I go, well, no, I can't fix it. That's only an i3 computer. Oh, so you sold me a piece of junk? No, I sold you a good computer 4 years ago. And you weren't opening files like this 4 years ago. It wasn't designed for that. So you're telling me I have to buy a new computer when I just bought this one 4 years ago? Yes, great. I'll take my business somewhere else. Do you see how when they bought it, I was the hero because I saved them all the money? But 4 years later, when it's not working well for them because their needs have changed and the computer, it doesn't have the power or the resources they now need, now I'm a bad guy. Now I've ripped them off, and now they feel like they've been taken to the cleaners. I'm not going to do that to my customers. So I don't recommend those 3 series chips because it affects my reputation and my integrity as a business owner. I want my customers to be happy and to stay happy with anything they purchase from me. Michael Dane says a current i3 price is about $144, and for $25 to $50 more, you can get an i5. Yeah, it's not that much of a price difference. Craze66 says he's got an old 3930K that needs a new power supply fan. Those power supply fans aren't replaceable. I mean, granted, anything's replaceable, but they usually have stickers warning you to stay out of them. They're high voltage areas. Power supplies are cheap though. And of course, if you've got the technical skill, it's not rocket science to replace a power supply fan. But generally, they don't want consumers doing it because of the high voltage. And if that power supply fan went out, that means that power supply's been running hot for a while. I would just replace the power supply. Some people cut corners. I have a business to run. I have a reputation. I have integrity to protect. I'm not cutting corners. I'm not sweeping dirt under rugs. I just don't want to risk going out of business for corner cutting. But it's pretty common for home users to do that. Bruce says my i5 4430 is just now getting slow, and that's only because of the mechanical hard drive. All my good stuff has been sold due to kids and life things. Well, a 4th generation i5 is still valid for Windows 10. Solid state drives are super inexpensive. You can pick them up for $20. And that can have that breathe new life into it, at least until the end of support for Windows 10 in October of 2025. So you got another 2.5 years left in it. Very inexpensive to put a solid state drive in. The shame of it is these little mini PCs that I've been giving away, you can buy these on Amazon, these off-lease business computers. These are 3 years newer than that. These are 6th generation Core i5-6500T, already with a solid state drive, already with 8 gigs of RAM, and already with Windows 10 installed. These are also not Windows 11 compatible. However, you could have a whole computer for $100 off Amazon. That's better than the one you have. Or you can spend $100 and upgrade yours. But you know, you're still going to be with the same CPU. I would rather get the newer CPU if it were me. Bruce says, Carrie, the example customer sounds like a Karen, and 90% of this area in regards to expect way too much computer for very little money. Well, understand from a customer's perspective, they're coming to me because they trust me. They could go to Best Buy and just go buy a computer, right? If I'm not going to sell them anything any better than Best Buy, then why did they bother coming to me? It's a very valid argument. If you're going to buy from me, you're doing it primarily because you're trusting what I'm selling you is going to meet your needs. It's going to be affordable. I'm not going to take you to the cleaners. And if you ever have a problem, you're going to call me, the guy who built it. You're not going to call whoever answers the phone or who's ever working at Best Buy that day, right? Or Dell. So I wouldn't say the customer's a Karen at all. I would say that the customer has very reasonable expectations that I am responsible for setting, you understand? So if my customer's expectations are not being met, it's because I failed. I'm looking at my tablet and I'm using the mouse trying to move. I think it's been a long day. How long have I been live here today? 2 hours and 40 minutes. Okay, well, I think that's probably long enough. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me today. I want to thank Minisforum for sending me the machine for review. I like it. A nice middle of the road computer here with the i5, or the Ryzen 5 rather. That's right down the middle. You're not at the high end, and you're not at the scraping the bottom of the barrel. Oh. I got a response from Explaining Computers, yesterday's video where I warned people against installing Windows 11. And his response, I pinned it so it's at the top of the comments. He's very much defending himself when I wasn't. I think he might have misinterpreted me, might have made a bad first impression. I think he's an excellent content creator. But he's very defensive in his response. I will say that I appreciate that he took the time to respond, and if you want to see his response, just check out yesterday's live video. Look in the comments, his is the very first comment. But that was nice of him to take a moment to respond. I respect it. I respect it very much. But I think we got off on, I think he's misinterpreted. I wasn't accusing him of anything. Quite the opposite. I think he makes excellent content. I might have to direct message him, or maybe he's not being defensive. Maybe I'm reading it that way. That wasn't my intent. Bruce says, I thought about a newer Optiplex or something I can throw a modest GPU upgrade into. Well, don't tell me you don't have much money and then tell me you want a GPU. I don't have a lot of money for transportation. I just want a cheap Cadillac. Can I just get a relatively inexpensive Rolls Royce? Is really all I need. You got to pick one or the other, my friend. The good news is that the built-in graphics that are coming on modern CPUs are better than graphics cards sold a few years ago. Now, granted, with, you get into those 1080s or even a 960, then the discrete graphics card is obviously going to be far superior. But the built-in graphics cards are surprisingly capable if it's been a while since you've messed around with them. Bradley Morris says, great video, Carrie. That's a nice looking mini PC. I will say, Minisforum really takes the lead when it comes to the design aesthetics of their computers. David Graham recommends a Radeon RX 6650 XT as the best way to go for a cheap GPU. Gil Garcia said, that's a nice PC. I wish I had one like it. Old Man 55 says, does the UM560XT have a USB4 port? No, this model does not. We answered that earlier. I guess you missed it. But you have to get the Ryzen 9 version of this to get the USB4 ports. What would you do with a USB4 port? Why are you asking that question? Like, I don't have anything USB 4. Do you? Do you have, what would you use USB 4 for? Or you're just curious? Bobby G says, I bought a SATA cable from Alibaba and it went on fire. Is it possible to replace the port it fried? Remember how I talked about everybody that's trying to save money spends more money than people? It hurts my brain. Somebody will pay for something cheaply 3 times over, which in the long run takes up more time and costs way more money than just buying something of quality. I'm not saying buying the most expensive thing. I'm saying just buy, in the middle. Don't buy the bottom of the barrel. Don't buy at the top of the range, because that depreciates quickly and it can have all kinds of teething problems. But in this giant middle area, it's worth it to pay a few extra pennies to get something that isn't going to, or it's less likely going to cause more damages in both your time and your equipment. So I'm not aware of being able to replace a port now. No, in most cases, that port's just going to be dead. And I hope you think twice about what you think is saving money, because that obviously costs you a lot more than just buying the right cable from a reputable source. It's going to cost you a lot more. And this is what I keep trying to convey to people as a professional computer technician. I would never, ever sell a customer something I sourced from AliExpress. Imagine the legal liability and financial damages that I would be held accountable for. Would there be more profit in it? Initially, there would be. But the long-term consequence would likely put me out of business and ruin my reputation. People spending that little bit always spend more, always. The people who can least afford it are making these decisions. That's keeping them poor. It's just a way to keep yourself down. You know how I know? Because I used to be that person. I used to do that. Took me a while to figure it out. Not entirely my fault. I was raised by parents who did that. So I didn't know any better. Shamim wants to know, can we say that a bare bone is a customized mini PC? I suppose. I mean, it's already got a name. It's called bare bone. Sometimes, you know, you can buy a skin that fits, sticks onto it, and you could say that's customizing the PC. Or you can change your wallpaper and say that's customizing your PC. But I mean, it does have a name to identify what it is, and that's bare bone. And that traditionally means that you have to provide your own RAM, your own storage, and your own operating system. Now, that can even vary depending on how the manufacturer is defining bare bone. But that's the generally accepted definition throughout the industry. But there's always going to be exceptions here or there. Jim KJ3N says a plain RX 6600 GPU is about $200, which is good value for low end. William Liu says an Intel Core i3 is too slow. Doman says frying a SATA cable is quite an achievement, really. It kind of is, right? Bruce says, yes, the GPU would be much later and then something like a 3050. Yeah, it seems to me you're putting a cart before the horse. It's like you're designing the cover of a book you haven't even started writing yet. But it's good to have goals. But ideally, you'd want to put that 3050 into something much more powerful than the computer you've got now. Lou Greenia says, I used to fix my own car with cheap parts, but not anymore. I leave that crap to the people that know what they're doing and pay less in the long run. I used to fix my car because I didn't have any money. I couldn't afford to pay somebody to fix it. And I would buy the cheapest parts I could buy because I couldn't even afford those. So I was living off credit cards, which was charging me a lot of interest, and the car would just break again. And then I was having to buy tools. That was costing me money. I was cutting my hands up. I was buying lava soap, you know, that hand cleaning soap, and goop. I'm buying that stuff to get all the grease off my hands. If you add up everything I spent, here's what I learned. When I bought my very first new car, I got no help from anybody. I want to emphasize, nobody helped me. How old was I? 1995, I would have been 27 years old. Never had a new car before. I don't think my mother owned a new car in her whole life. I don't think my father owned a brand new car in his whole life. They always bought used cars. And I didn't know I was poor. I just thought that was just the way everybody is, right? Because the neighborhood we grew in, everybody had a similar lifestyle. So I decided, I saw an advertisement for a Chevy S10 pickup truck, 4-cylinder, just a stripper is what they call it. It's got nothing on it. No air. It had air conditioning, but it was a manual transmission. I think power windows and power locks were, automatic. They didn't have crank windows anymore on new car, not GM anyway. Anyway, so the deal was 0 down, $250 a month for 48 months, and the car is yours, 1995. Brand new car with a 3-year factory warranty. So I went into the dealer. They initially did not want to honor the deal. And I was very concerned of how I was going to pay $250 a month in 1995. That the car I owned, the used car that I owned, while it was breaking all the time, it was paid off. I'd never ever had a car payment in my life. So the minute they wouldn't meet that deal, it wasn't like I was being a hard negotiator. I just barely could afford $250 a month, and even that I wasn't sure I could do. So when I realized that they weren't going to meet the deal, I said, okay, thanks for trying, and so much for that idea. Got in my car to leave, and some other salesman came out and knocked on the window of my car. I had an old F-body Camaro at that time. And he says, you're not leaving with a car? What happened? I said, yeah, they won't meet the deal I saw on TV, so I can't afford. He goes, well, what deal on TV are you talking about? I said, there's a commercial that you can get a brand new Chevy S10 for $0 down, $250 a month for 48 months, and it's paid for. He goes, we can make that deal, come back in. So I go back in, and he writes up the contract, and he's written it at $250.99. He wanted to squeeze that extra $48, right? It's an extra $1 a month for 48 months. And I left with the Chevy S10. And I was scared to death. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to come up with $250 a month now. And I think I was making $6 or $7 an hour. So after taxes were taken out of that, it wasn't very much take-home pay. But what I found out was I was spending more than $250 a month on the used car with all the repairs, the tools, the hand cleaners, the parts. And when I got into the new car, it didn't have that oil smell that old cars have. You know, everything was new. The seats are new. Nobody's ever had this car. It's mine, brand new. Emotionally, it like lifted this weight off of my shoulders that I didn't even know was there until it was removed. Because, you know, I had this anxiety. Is my car going to start today? Every time I'd go to start it, is it going to start? What's next? Is it going to get me where I want to go without a problem? Hopefully. But with a brand new car, it starts right away. The engine's not cranking and cranking and cranking, and you're like, come on, baby, let's go, come on. No, it just barely touched the key. Boom, it fires up. Anti-lock brakes, beautiful steering, very comfortable drive, great gas mileage, and no concern. What's going to happen? Hey, if anything happens, I call the dealer, they come pick it up, or I drop it off over there and they work on it under warranty. It won't cost me anything for the next 3 years. So while I had all this anxiety about, you know, $250 a month, where am I going to come up with that kind of money? What ended up happening was it was saving me money. I didn't realize I was probably spending $300 to $350 a month. It varied. You know, some months there wouldn't be much, and other months it'd be a lot, depending on what was broken. And plus, there was my time, and I'm working on the car. You know, the car could fall on me when I'm working on it. Anything's possible. Is that worth it? So what I learned from that was that I saved money by buying the new car and put myself in a better mental place. A lot of anxiety went away, and I felt better. And after owning that car for 2 years, I realized that $250 was easy. I'd like to get a bigger car. So I took the car back and I bought an extended cab Chevy S10 in 1997, took the other car in as a trade, and basically started payments over again, but this time it was for 60 months. I never go more than 60 months on a car payment. Never, never, never. Because then you're out of warranty, you gotta keep full coverage on the car. It's crazy. So 60 months, and it was, instead of $250, it was $299. And I got another brand new car. Gave them that one, got an extended automatic transmission, extended cab Chevy S10. I was hauling big monitors, big 27-inch CRTs, and I didn't like having them in the back of the pickup truck where anybody could steal them. This is Phoenix. Turn your head for 3 seconds, it'll be gone. So in 1999, 2 years later, I brought the Chevy S10 extended cab back to the dealer, and I said, I need an SUV. I need something with tinted windows that I can load these big 27-inch monitors into where people can't really see into the car, and it's secured. So if I'm parking to unload some equipment, that while I'm unloading the equipment and bringing it into the customer's office, someone's not unloading my truck. So they sold me a 1999 Chevy Blazer two-door, which was perfect. And that wasn't, again, starting those 60-month payments, starting back at zero again, for another $50 a month. So I think my payment was $349 a month. And I had that car for 19 years. But I will say, it was a very unreliable car. After it got to be about 9 years old, things just started to break. And by the time I got rid of it, it had problems that I couldn't fix, that I couldn't figure out. And plastic was dry and brittle from the Phoenix heat and lack of humidity, you know, the arid air. And the paint was starting to chip away. The dashboard was cracked from the sun. It was just becoming a pile of junk. But I definitely got my money's worth out of that car. And I always do my oil changes on time because I can't afford to just go buy another car. It's cheaper to do the oil change than to have to replace the car because you fried the motor. And I found that I could pay the dealer to do the oil change so they have a record that it was done to honor the warranty if there's any problems. Otherwise, you need to be able to prove the oil changes were done or your warranty will not be honored from any car manufacturer. So let the dealer do the oil change, and they were doing it for about the same as it would cost me to do it myself. And then I don't have to worry about taking the old oil to a recycling center and how do I haul the old oil without it spilling into the car. What a mess. So, yeah. And that has saved me so much money than just going the route of keep buying used and keep buying junk. And it saved me from, you know, having a mental breakdown from all the anxiety. Chris Salter has become a supporter. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining the Tech Club. Farrell Sparky said, it's expensive to live poor. That's the truth. If I knew now, if I knew then what I know now, I would have taught my parents. David Graham says, be sure to trade in your new car before the warranty is up and you'll always be happy. Well, I don't agree with that because to me, the car has depreciated too much. So you're going to lose money on it. Most new cars, like my Mustang, I had the Mustang for 8 years and it never needed a repair. The Mini Cooper I had that for 8 years and it needed some repairs, but it was overall a very reliable car. I just didn't like the dealer. There was only one Mini Cooper dealer in Arizona at the time. And I didn't want anybody but the dealer to touch it because it's such a unique car. It's very difficult to work on. And I have no problem buying a used car as long as the car is, you know, within 3 years old. It's low mileage. And then get the extended warranty. Now, I did have a BMW 3 Series, and while it was in warranty, there was a $50 deductible, and then they'd fix whatever needed to be fixed. But that car had so many problems. And I ended up getting another BMW 3 Series that was a couple years newer, thinking BMW would address these issues, right? No, it was the same issues and worse. It wasn't that I got a bad one, and it was just BMW just went cheap with a lot of like plastic window motor gears that windows would stop rolling down, indicators would stop blinking. They just cheaped out. So I realized BMW is a car, I would say Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Porsche. These are cars you want to buy new. When they're out of warranty, turn them in. Just get rid of them. They're going to cost a lot of money to keep them. And since I don't make that kind of money, got that out of my system real quick. But when I did buy those used BMWs, they had an extended warranty on them from the dealership. So they were under warranty for like 2 years, where there was a $50 deductible. And I love driving it. BMW 3 Series, fantastic car to drive, for sure. But yeah, too expensive to maintain out of warranty. Paul McIntosh said, I'm 70 years old. I've never had a new car. My income was never stable enough to have 5-year payments. Paul, my income was never stable enough to have a 5 years worth of payments. But it's like you do what you have to do. Because you've never been in a situation where you had to do it, you've kind of chalked up that you couldn't. But if you'd had to have done it, you probably could have. I've met people that don't own a car. I say, how come you don't own a car? They say, because I don't go anywhere. I'm like, no, you don't go anywhere because you don't own a car. If you had a car, you'd go places. So sometimes people reverse the thought. But I can tell you that I absolutely did not have a stable income. And I was very worried over whether or not I was going to be able to make that payment. But that I would figure it out. And not only did I figure it out, I figured it out so well that I was able to increase that car payment by over $100 when I got the Blazer. You know, if you compare the two, it's a $100 a month price difference. And not only just for 48 months, but for 60 months and starting over twice. But if I didn't have to do it, I probably wouldn't have, and I would have come to the same conclusion you just said, which is never had a stable enough income. But when I had to have it, it's amazing what we're capable of doing when we get the right motivation. Luke Greenia says, I try not to keep a vehicle over 70,000 miles. Hey, if you can afford that, I think it's great. Kyler wants to know if I've ever driven an electric vehicle. Yes. I've driven the Model S and the Model 3, and I really like the Model 3 a lot. Rip City Raider says hello. Hey, welcome in, Rip City Raider. David Graham says good credit is the key. Well, there's only one way to get good credit, and that is you got to get some credit, and then you got to keep paying it on time. And there's my friend Ron at Hillier says he made it back. Well, you made it back just in time for the goodbye. That's going to pretty much wrap it up for today. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me and for participating in the chat. Thanks to Minisforum for sending the unit for review. If there are questions about it I've missed, feel free to write them in the comments section. If I've got this all boxed up and it's a question you've got internally about the unit, I'm not going to hook it all back up just for that. But I'll keep it in mind for the next review, just as I've done for this one, you know, looking at who makes the NIC. I know people want to put Linux or other operating systems on, or maybe they want to use it as a pfSense router or something, and they want to know what NIC is in there so they can determine if it can be used for that purpose. A lot of technical questions like that you can also ask directly to the manufacturer, or check out the website minisforum.com to see more detailed specifications. But as I mentioned, if there's a question, a technical question that requires me to open it up or requires me to hook it back up, I likely will not be able to provide that answer, but I will keep it in mind for other reviews going forward so I can try and do it right the first time. It's just hard to, never in my life have I cared who makes the network card. It's a question I don't expect to get, or who makes the BIOS, like who cares? So I don't understand why some people are asking the questions, if it's hypothetical, if there's a real reason behind it. Because I guess people are using the computers in a way I've never used one, for purposes I don't need, or for purposes that don't interest me. But it's not a big deal for me to answer those questions while I have the unit hooked up. And hopefully, I covered all that well today. So thanks again for the contributions and the support. Thanks will go out to I'm looking at the contributors during today's show. Avery Ramsdorf, George Schloika, Mark Gaines, Colin Hunt, David Dix at Rock City PC, Michael Dane, Viable Solutions, David Graham, and welcome to our latest member of the Tech Club, Chris Salter. Guys, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you all very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.